The story begins with a man proposing to an aristocrat to break off her engagement. The girl heard this on Friday night at a party celebrating the return of the Duke of Claremont's second son. The man was telling Elle de Blois that he no longer wished to be her fiancé. The noblewoman panicked and asked François-Joseph de Bar not to leave her, but he had fallen out of love with her. Suddenly, Adelaide de Grande entered the conversation, saying that now the man loved her, and she was sorry for what had happened. Elle did not expect to hear such nonsense, so she could barely contain her emotions. Suddenly, the girl rammed a strong blow into the man's stomach, causing him to fall to his knees. Now that the girl knew about the affair, she decided to break the engagement. She ordered the couple themselves to tell the Marquis about it, not forgetting to indicate the reason why the engagement was broken off. Back at the palace, the aristocrats began to ask Ella where the man had gone. After a while, they were surprised that the girl had broken the engagement so easily. The aristocrats congratulated the heroine on gaining her freedom and offered her a drink. The girls mentioned that it was very difficult for them to say hello to the main person of the party, Grey Theodore. For years, the Duke of Claremont's son hadn't shown his face at all, and no one knew the reason for his sudden appearance. Lady Elle had studied with him at the academy, so the girls wanted to know what he was like. Suddenly, Francois and Adelaide, together, under the arm, went out into the public, showing the seriousness of their relationship. The heroine had previously guessed the man's intentions. Even when they first met Adelaide, Francois could not take his eyes off her. The girl turned a blind eye because the man was her love and best friend. One day, Francois came out to greet Elle, and that's when she fell in love with him because of the bright smile he gave her. Presently, the heroine quickly ran out of the palace. If she had known this would happen, she would never have engaged Francois. The girl was sure that the man would love another, but she couldn't believe that he would betray her. Ella wanted badly to turn back time to the time before she met him, and if that ever happened, she promised never to love Francois again. The girl fell to the ground and prayed to God to take pity on her and send her back in time, after which she lost consciousness. Suddenly, an unknown man announced that the heroine would be executed. The girl came to her senses, realizing that it was only a dream. She panicked, for she had woken up with Theodore in a bedroom she had never seen before. Augustus Theodore Jean de Claremont was a knight of the Duke of Claremont and the son of His Majesty the King's younger sister Claire. The man was from the same military academy as her, and he was also the protagonist of the evening at which she had announced her breakup. Theodore told her that he had found Ella drunk, lying in the garden, which was why he had brought her to this room. They had spent their cadet days together at the military academy, but they had never been friends. Besides, Theodore was completely out of control at the knight's appointment ceremony. Seeing the frightened girl, the man asked her to be more careful, because if she didn't, he would be very disappointed. He did nothing, and held back for a very long time. Theodore drew close to heroine, saying that he wished to do this to his master. Ella jumped up and ran away, out of the nobleman's room. Running to her manor, the maid began to ask the girl why she was frightened and had been gone all night. The heroine needed to hide the fact that she had spent the whole night with Theodore, considering it was right after the engagement broke up. Later, the maid dressed the girl up, saying that she was the best submission knight in the Rohan Kingdom. The heroine was a knight of the Rohan Kingdom and deputy commander of the November Knights. She was the heiress of the honourable house of Blois, which protects the royal family. Although Ella needed to think a bit about what happened in the morning, she couldn't waste time being sad. This very morning, the girl went to sword training and spent a long time on it. In the middle of training, Maurice de Louis, the son of heroine's mother's lieutenant, came to heroine. They grew up like a family in Elle's hometown. A couple minutes later, Dame Lucy Laberne came to visit them. Although she was a commoner, she was well known among the knights for her outstanding information-gathering abilities. However, she hadn't been promoted in years because of her recklessness. The girl said that no matter how much the leader favoured Dame Elle, it was already too much for Sir Maurice. The heroine didn't understand what it all meant. The man turned the topic to documents and quickly ran to the office. Going into her office, the heroine was amazed because her office, which was always a mess of documents, was completely clean. Suddenly, behind the girl was Theodore. Getting down on one knee, he said that he had recently been initiated into the Knights of November Order and appointed assistant to the deputy commander. After that, Elle went to the commander's office, wanting to know what happened to the lieutenant's post. The heroine had become the deputy commander of the Knights Division, so the man could not leave the position of her assistant vacant. The girl was furious at this kind of behaviour. The man understood her feelings, but still, Sir Theodore was a member of the royal family, and he could lose his head if something went wrong. He apologised, because it was too late to change his decision, as all the documents had been signed, and there was nothing he could do about it. Suddenly Elle saw behind the commander a display case with many bottles of Chateau Le Duvalier, the best wine in the empire. Suddenly the girl realised that the wine was produced in the Duke of Claremont's territory, and it was a common giveaway. Suddenly, Maurice announced that an official letter had arrived last night with an urgent matter. It was going to be postponed, but it turned out to be a letter stamped with the royal family's seal. The heroine realised that the royal family had stepped in to manage the affairs of the knights while she was at the ball. But little did she know the schedule of the deputy commander. It had to be someone stately, someone who wanted to help Theodore for his own interests and gain. A little while later, Elle arrived to meet the princess. The girl asked the heroine if she liked the gift. That was Ella's main problem, because at such an early age, the princess knew everything about military tactics, politics, and economics. She was fully equipped with the skills needed to become the next ruler. Princess of the Kingdom of Rawn. Maria Josephine Clare was also known as Princess Pippin. Elle didn't understand how a princess could call her cousin a gift. The girl congratulated the termination of the engagement as rumours spread quickly. The princess said that the newspapers had been harping on heroine's attempt to steal Francis from Adelaide, but the girl thought it was just a rumour. Pippin claimed that the Baroness had claimed otherwise. No one noticed how terrible it was, because a broken engagement was a great profit for the nobility. The princess did not want the honour of one of her knights to be spoiled by such a trivial thing. Because of this, she was very upset. It was because of this that the girl gave the heroine Theodore, for the best way to destroy a rumour was to create a new one. The rumour that the beautiful Lady Elle suddenly has a rabid dog Claremont in her charge may make the aristocrats forget the breaking of the engagement. Theodore ran away on the day of the inauguration and was stripped of his rights to the throne. The princess felt that Ella was the only person who could subdue her cousin. Though Pennine seemed foolish and naive, the royal family needed someone to take care of the problem, and heroine needed something shocking to eliminate the rumours. Elle assured that Theodore couldn't be her assistant. That's when the princess decided to take drastic measures and do the only thing Ella liked. The girl hugged heroine's arm and offered to raise her salary by 10%. After a while on the street, Elle blamed herself for the fact that she could not refuse such an offer. Going into the office, the girl told Theodore that from today, he would be her assistant. For disobeying her orders, he would be reprimanded much more severely than the other knights. The man calmly agreed, but Elle could not believe it, because in the days of the academy he was capricious and always dissatisfied. The girl was about to leave, but Theodore came close to her, asking why she was surprised. The heroine asked to remove her hands, but the man reminded her that she had become the owner of a dog, so the more she pushed him away, the more he was going to approach. Ella ordered silence as he ran away from her ceremony, but, at the princess's request, she decided to take him in. The man asked if Elle was afraid of Claremont's rabid dog, but the woman assured him that there was no such thing. A knight was not supposed to feel fear, except fear of his master, so heroine had no one to fear but her Princess Pippin. Hearing this, Theodore said that the girl should keep him on a short leash. The man took the girl's hand and asked her to call him Theo, adding that she would be the leash for this crazy dog. Later, heroine dreamed that she was wrapped in chains and accused of murder and treason, about to be executed. The girl woke up suddenly, then went down to the dining table and sat down to read the newspaper. Rumours that Theodore had become her subordinate had already spread throughout the empire. The maid brought the food, then the heroine asked her if she had ever dreamed of her own death. The woman didn't recall such a thing, but she had heard that such dreams were good omens, so heroine had nothing to worry about. She had been having nightmares lately, which could be the result of stress. It had been 2 days since Ella had accepted Sir Theodore as her assistant, but he was the reason she didn't want to go into her own office. Maurice couldn't believe that Ella was afraid of the sergeant, so he gave her a book called There Are No Bad Dogs. The man was about to leave, but he remembered the party for the recruits and remembered it to heroine. Suddenly, Theodore looked out of the office, not understanding why the girl wasn't coming in. The girl was wondering why the man was calling her master. Theodore was avoiding a direct answer, but they both studied at the same military academy, so Ella wanted to know the reason why he started calling her that. The man applied for the position of assistant deputy commander, even though he was a high-ranking nobleman because of the master. The heroine didn't care what Theodore thought of her, but he had to call her Dame L from now on. The man tilted his head, saying that he did not wish to do so. From today, they started working together. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep well at night. Theodore started to get closer and closer to the girl, but with a swift movement she threw him to the floor. The man thought that heroine liked to dominate, but she said that she knew him well. She'd heard that he wasn't interested in anything he didn't like. Heroine didn't understand what was wrong because Sarge's body was relaxed and he was enjoying this moment. At that moment, Lucy ran into Heroine's office, wanting to tell her that she was going to the main office. The girl was embarrassed, thinking that she had interrupted Elle with Theodore. The man didn't understand why the girl was still angry, as he just wanted to shake off her cloak. The girl instantly remembered that Lucy was going to the main office, so she gave her the papers, telling her to take Theodore with her and do some paperwork. The man bickered, but when he heard that this was his mistress's order, he obeyed it meekly and went on his way. On the way, Lucy gazed at Theodore's beauty, saying that if he smiled more often, he would be very popular with the girls. The girl wondered why the man called Elle a master, but he could not say it. But there were a number of reasons for that. Near the main office, the girl asked Theodore to be careful, as their superiors are completely impenetrable. At this time, the heroine thought she was starting to lose her mind, as she read how to handle dogs. The girl thought that her subordinates would need time to straighten out the paperwork, so she decided to get some sleep. Suddenly, Theodore and Lucy burst into the office, who couldn't believe that they had been checked out so quickly. The girl said that as soon as they arrived at the main office, everyone was horrified by the expression on Theodore's face. The heroine was very curious about what the man had done. Theodore was very useful. Besides, he cleaned her office, which was always a mess because of the piles of documents. The man did not stop looking at Elle. Then she began to think that she was too harsh with him. The heroine decided to leave the case of robbery of aristocrats and will go on patrol. Walking down the street, the man memorized all the streets of the city. The girl said that now they would often go out into the city. Theodore was very happy because they will be able to spend more time, just the two of them. Ella remembered the record that all dogs like to walk and that a walk relieves stress. Suddenly, the heroine heard a noise in a dark alley and was about to attack, but it was just an ordinary cat. The knights left without noticing that there was a suspicious man in that alley. Later, the girl couldn't help thinking that her intuition had failed her. There were rumours of a thief known as Zephyr, who had appeared the other day and was stealing from the homes of many aristocrats. Since the thief was too fast, he was named after the god of wind. Elle was sure something was wrong here because they still couldn't find any leads. Theodore offered to take another look around the street, but the girl decided to call it a day. The man was upset because he wanted to walk around some more. The heroine asked the sergeant to memorize everything he saw for the next patrol. Suddenly, the thief snatches Elle's bag, knocking her to the ground. The girl once again felt pain in her leg, which she had injured at the last appointment. Theodore wanted to take heroine to the hospital, but she ordered him not to worry about her and ran after the bag. The man chased after the thief, almost catching up with him across the street, but he managed to dodge his sword. Using the rope on the house, Theodore ran horizontally across its wall and still managed to knock down the insolent thief, who he would not allow to touch his master. The man swung his sword, wanting to kill the thief, but Elle stopped him. She couldn't believe that the sergeant had been able to track down the attacker so quickly. Theodore was shocked because the girl's leg was perfectly fine. Maurice said that it was just a test, and there was a welcome party for the new recruits of their division that couldn't be missed. The man realised that the thief had brought him to this place on purpose, and Elle's injury was just an ordinary pretense. The heroine apologised, saying that everyone went through it, so it was not worth getting upset. Theodore thanked the girl for stopping him in time, because otherwise he could have made a serious mistake. The girl thanked Sir Jerome for his work, and then the knights went to the bar. Jerome was horrified as this was no ordinary fun, and Theodore actually tried to kill him. The knights apologised to Lucy for waiting, telling her that the initiation ceremony had gone splendidly. The girl reported that the commander was not in attendance because he had left to help on Zephyr's case. The jeweller repaired the princess's broken necklace, but Zephyr notified that he was going to steal it, so he asked the commander to help with the transportation. One of the knights thought Zephyr was a rarity, for he was a thief who takes care of poor children with stolen items. Despite all this, he remained a thief, even if he considers himself a righteous man. The heroine ordered everyone to calm down, after which the party began. Before it started, Maurice asked Elle to say something as deputy commander. The girl said that they had gathered to welcome Theodore. She hoped that everyone would get to know him better and join in the celebration. Everyone started the feast, and after a while the heroine noticed that the atmosphere was very different from other events. Everyone except Lucy had gone quiet and was silently drinking and eating. The girl told everyone how she and Theodore went to the main office together, and they were not strict with them. Ella thought that everything would be fine, so it was safe to leave. Theodore noticed his mistress leaving and loudly asked her to stay. Everyone was shocked that the man was calling heroine his mistress. Some began to think of what it could mean, but one of them decided to ask directly why someone with royal blood was calling Ella mistress. The girl didn't know what to say. Then Theodore assured everyone that he just owed her. The knights tried to get the man to talk, but he just kept quiet. At the moment when Elle again wished to leave, Lucy proposed a game of truth or action, and for the acquaintance they had to ask Theodore a question each, and if he refused, he would be punished and drink her cocktail. The heroine expected the man to refuse, but still asked him if he would participate. Theodore agreed, and then Lucy began to prepare a cocktail that could down even a bear. Ella realised that no one would dare to just ask Sir Theodore anything, but Lucy immediately decided to find out if he liked the heroine. The man confirmed her guesses and wanted to download something else, but the girl asked him not to answer. Theodore started to speak, but Elle gave the order not to say anything, after which he silently obeyed and drank the cocktail. The heroine noticed that the man's look changed a little. Lucy wondered how much Theodore could drink, but he never counted and just drank until he passed out. It was time for another question, and the heroine became worried, because if this continued, they would be in danger. For Theodore's safety, Elle decided to drink everything for him. Later, the girl felt really bad about a few of Lucy's cocktails. She believed that even if she had kept silent, they would have started talking about her behind her back anyway. Maurice did not understand what Ella was talking about, but she clarified that earlier, the knights had just pelted Theodore with strange questions, trying to find out something. Maurice apologised, saying that all knights would be punished, but the girl assured that everything was fine, because if it wasn't for Lucy, Theodore wouldn't have fit in. She decided to leave it as it was, so tomorrow she and Maurice could go to the training ground and become closer. The man asked to be left out of it, but Ella remembered that he was involved in the fuss with the questions, so the training ground would be his punishment for failing to control the knights. Entering the bar, the heroine saw a drunken Theodore, while everyone said they were trying to stop Lucy. A maid entered the princess's room and asked the girl to go to bed, but she was reluctant to do so. Pennine looked out the window, thinking that Madame L was having incredible fun right now. At this time, heroine was dragging Theodore on her back, since 10 minutes ago everyone was afraid to touch. In the middle of the road, the girl met Maurice, who agreed to help her. The man laughed, for he had never thought that one day there would come a day when he would be helping a rabid dog of Claremont. Elle said that the princess and duchess had asked her to look after Theodore. Since Theodore was in such a state, the heroine will have to visit the princess and the duchess. Maurice offered to take a man to the duchy, since the Duchess is friendly with the Blois family, so the girl could go and explain the situation. Elle decided to depart, and Maurice reminded her that the lives of the Knights of the Division were in her hands from now on. The heroine left, and Maurice, entering the bar, was shocked, because all the knights were in a terrible state. Drunken Lucy pounced on the man, asking how he could do this to her, because now she cannot live normally because of him. Maurice suspected nothing and began to take everyone to their rooms. Elle almost reached the Duke's residence, wondering how Theodore was sleeping in such a cramped carriage. This had never happened before, when the girl had been drinking with Francis, so she didn't even know what it looked like. The heroine pretended that everything was fine, but she still couldn't believe what had happened. This was the beginning of her unrequited love, which lasted for several years, so it was natural to break the engagement. Theodore got hot, and he began to undress, as suddenly the carriage ran over a stone, and the girl ran into him. Ella wanted to sit down in her seat, but the man forcefully put her on the seat and pressed himself against her. The girl asked to stop, while Theodore asked to do it at least once. Earlier heroine, the man seemed handsome when she saw him from afar, but having examined him up close, she could say that he was incredibly handsome. Everything that was happening seemed like a dream for Theodore because now Elle was in his full power. The man wanted to kiss the girl, but she covered his mouth with her hand. Then Theodore began to lick her. The heroine thought that this should not happen, because a knight should be pure and remain so until the end. The carriage stopped, and the Duchess began to tell them to get out as soon as possible. The butler was about to open the carriage, but Ella quickly threw Theodore off of her and ran out to meet the Duchess. The Duchess was looking forward to seeing Elle. Besides, it was late, so she offered the girl to stay the night. The heroine said it wasn't necessary. She had urgent business to attend to, so she had to return as soon as possible. The butler looked into the carriage and was surprised to see Theodore there, all beaten up. The Duchess thought that her son had fallen or been hit by the carriage, but she was concerned that he was half naked, and because of that she wanted to know what had happened in the carriage. The woman took the guests to the mansion, ordering a servant to go to the knighthood and inform them that Elle would be staying at the Claremont mansion. The Duchess explained that she and her son were the only ones living in the mansion, so they would turn off the lights at night. When they reached a quiet place, Theodore's mother asked if her son was being bullied at work. She had noticed bruises on the man's neck when she helped him, the kind of bruises that can only come from a beating, as if someone had pushed him hard. The woman couldn't believe that a guy who doesn't usually drink was so drunk. The Duchess was worried all the time, for after the ceremony, Theodore had left and wandered around the world as a mere knight, so it was hard to know if he was alive or dead. Waiting for her husband only made her more anxious. Duke Claremont was a famous knight, but he had disappeared and it was still unknown whether he was alive or dead. The woman reported Theodore's story that he was only able to return because of Ella, so she hoped to thank her one day. The Duchess asked heroine to go to bed in any room, then left, with the only lamp in the mansion, which confused the girl. Elle opened the door of the first room, and in it was Theodore, with a pensive face. At this time, a strange feeling arose in the girl's stomach. The girl had a vision that the knights of the academy were asking her to stop Theodore, who had gone berserk. Covered in blood, the man asked the heroine to let him misunderstand her, because today he felt very good. During the night, Ella dreamed of Francois, after which Theodore began to molest her. The heroine woke up and saw the man on her bed. He came to wake up the girl, but he could not do it, because she was sound asleep. Elle asked Theodore to leave, however. He wanted an answer as to why she was calling him so desperately in her sleep. The heroine threw the man out of the room and went to change her clothes. Later, at the dinner table, the Duchess invited the girl to the table, but she refused. The woman convinced Ella to have breakfast, and she sat down, but she was embarrassed that Theodore had caused her a lot of trouble, and now looked as if nothing had happened. At this point, the girl thought that the man simply did not remember anything, because of alcohol. The Duchess told about the delicious tea that was brought from the East. The Kingdom of Rouen had long wished to establish trade relations with the Eastern continent, but it was impossible because of pirates. Suddenly Ella received a letter, stamped with the seal of the royal family, in which the princess asked if heroine had a good time at the Duchess's mansion. Later, the girl showed Maurice an invitation from the Crown Princess, as there would soon be a banquet that anyone could attend, regardless of status. Even people who didn't receive an invitation could attend the party if they could find a partner with him. The heroine announced that Maurice would have to accompany the princess instead of her. The man began to object, but the girl revealed that in a letter, the princess had spoken of her intentions to invite Adelaide to the party. Suddenly, the nearly dead knights pointed to the bodies of their fellow knights who couldn't survive the training. Ella thought they were cheerful and alert last night, so she thought those were ready for today's training. The girl said that it was all her fault, so if this punishment was so hard, she needed to increase the amount of training so that the next punishment wouldn't be easier. Maurice informed heroine that the commander had asked her to come to his office as soon as morning training was over. In the commander's office, the man wanted to know where his bottle of wine had disappeared to. The girl wanted to leave, but the commander told her that Zephyr had been seen last night. Last night, a man was delivering a necklace to the princess and saw him, but he was unable to catch up with him and he fled the chase. He searched the entire neighborhood, but he was nowhere to be found. At this rate, the prestige of the knights might have suffered greatly, and they couldn't let the thief continue to roam round. Upon arriving at work, the commander saw an invitation to a ball. The person who catches Zephyr at this party will receive a year's salary as a special reward. The heroine could not miss such a lucrative offer because of her love of money. Later in her office, Lucy saw the rotten bread and assumed it was poison training. Elle had wanted to use something like that so that she would eventually get sick, so she could be absent from the party. But knowing that her years of salary was on the line, she didn't need it anymore. When Lucy heard about the party, she offered herself as a partner, but the heroine refused, saying that she would be at the party only because of her mission. Ella suggested that she ask Maurice for an invitation, but she remembered what she had said in the bar, got embarrassed, and ran to patrol. The librarian told Theodore fearfully that he had borrowed books that were not available to regular readers. The man said that Elle had ordered them, but the man assured him that it was not according to the rules. Suddenly, Maurice entered the library and asked to register the books in his name. Afterwards, walking through the office, Maurice asked Theodore not to threaten everyone. Claremont's son did not understand the atmosphere of the office, and then Maurice told about the ball. The man said that he would be very happy if Theodore received such an invitation, but he was not interested. Maurice believed that Theodore would never have been invited anyway, but he was worried about Elle, because Adelaide was also invited to the party. The man recalled how he had once brought heroine to the bar, since he had lost in a practice match. The girl revealed that the cadets had just laughed at Theodore because he never lost. After getting drunk, the girl told about Francois. Then the man assumed that they were in a relationship, and Elle admitted that she truly loved him. Currently, Theodore admitted that the heroine had never told him such a thing. Maurice reported that the girl since childhood always kept everything to herself, but this time, everything was different. The man said that Ella needed Theodore. The princess wished Theodore to attend the party as a partner for the heroine to triumphantly avenge the traitors. Theodore cheered up and agreed with his co-workers' thoughts, for he really wanted to be the girl's partner. At this time, Francois was asking Adelaide what he should do, for his father was still furious about the annulment of the engagement, so he had also become public enemy number one. The girl thought the news about heroine and Theodore was only a measure to cover up the scandal on the part of the princess. Francois was worried, for Adelaide was the one who had said that everything would be all right. However, things changed and everyone started to avoid him. The girl couldn't listen to it anymore, as the man should have realized what would happen after he expressed disrespect to the sword princess. She did not understand what she found in Francois. On the other hand, that was why she had gotten him so easily. The girl said that things had only changed because no one could realize how pure their love was. Adele still needed Francois to destroy Elle's identity. There were three mystical things in the world that the heroine could not understand. She could not understand Theodore, the mad dog of the Claremont house who called him mistress, could not understand Princess Pippin's behavior, and finally the endless downloading of reports. The girl is constantly doing her paperwork, but somehow it never ends. Entering the office, the heroine saw Theodore sleeping, who did his work admirably. Elle hoped that he would not wake up for the rest of the day. Theodore had changed a lot in 5 years, because in the days of the academy, he was always in the center of endless scandals and could not hide his emotions at all. The girl held her breath and moved closer to the man to fix his hair. If the carriage hadn't pulled up to Theodore's manor then, they could have kissed. Suddenly the man asked when his mistress was going to do it, for he was already tired of waiting. Elle said that she had not thought of such a thing, but Theodore thought that the girl wanted to take him as a partner to the princess's party. After thinking a little, the heroine began to look for an excuse not to take a man with her. Elle said that if he could finish all her paperwork before her, she would take him with her. After a while, the two finished all the work, after which the heroine asked why Theodore wouldn't go to the princess himself and take the invitation to the party. The man wanted to officially come to the party with Ella and show that there was such a wonderful guy next to his mistress. The girl was only doing her duty, so she didn't need a partner, because she was doing everything just to catch Zephyr. Theodore remembered that the princess had told him about heroine's love of money, and the only reason the girl had taken him on as her assistant was money. The man suggested that heroine could be rewarded. Elle would be fine with that, as her family had money problems. The former Countess Victoria Blois was given the lands of Aquatan after she married the lord of those lands, but even then, her family was already in great debt due to the wars. Aquatan was one of the greatest granaries of the Rouen kingdom, and there had only been one battle, but her family was still unable to pay the expenses. The heroine wanted to close the debt on her own, and she didn't want these difficulties to be passed on to the next generation. Theodore decided to tell a story, after which Ella had to decide whether to make him her partner or not, since it concerned the academy. The man was on a jog, as suddenly Lucy came running to him. The heroine decided to be alone, although Theodore only asked her to take him to the party. The girl thought Elle was strange, because she thought that she rejected her request to become her partner, because she had already outlined Theodore for this role. Lucy believed that there was something between her and the deputy commander at the academy, and she didn't think that all the rumours about the man were true. Theodore confirmed that he was indeed a mad dog, as he would easily flare up and start attacking everyone. What he did at the night ceremony, a normal person would never do. Theodore couldn't stand by anymore, because the knights dared to molest Ella and taunt her, so he killed them all. The man realised that it would be hard for Lucy to understand him, but he wished to destroy anyone who would look down on Ella. The knights ran after the man in the cloak, and none of them could capture him. Finally, Theodore cornered him, but he jumped the fence and ran. Elle quickly drew her sword and struck the stranger, ordering him to show his face. Lucy took off her hood, saying that heroine shouldn't be so strict. After all, it was just a workout. The girl agreed, deciding to take a break and switch roles to continue training. Elle was the only one to catch Zephyr in all the training, so Theodore thought he would definitely get the reward. The more the heroine saw of the man, the more useful he seemed to her, for the latter was a good thinker, and his time management and paperwork was the best. The girl praised Theodore, but the man thought he deserved something better than the usual praise. Theodore assured that Elle would lose nothing if she took him to the party, because he, handsome, and they would look good together. Because of the man's good effort, the heroine could keep him company to the palace, where he could ask the princess for himself. Theodore couldn't understand the girl, as taking him as a partner would be the best solution for revenge. Considering Elle's situation with Adelaide, it would be a defeating victory. At this time, the princess met with the Duchess of Claremont. The girl assured that Elle would be irresistible at the upcoming party. This would have to be the very day when the House of Claremont and the House of Blois would go hand in hand. Recently, the princess had been informed of a strange situation, that although the House of Blois no longer had such strong alliances with other noble families, but if she supported them, it would strengthen the strength of the royal family. If everything went according to her plan, it would be a great advantage for both the royal family and the House of Blois. The Duchess thought that Ella was not interested in taking Theodore as a partner, but the princess assured that the woman was mistaken, for the heroine would not allow herself to be insulted. The Duchess said that the princess should have been wiser not to jump to such hasty conclusions. She always knew what to do when it came to politics, but things were not so easy when it came to male-female relationships. In the carriage, Theodore didn't realize where they were going, as they were going to the palace. The girl got out of the carriage, where the children were already waiting for her, who later started chatting cheerfully with her. Elle knew all these children because the princess had helped them, through her. The children began to embrace the heroine, and then one of them ordered the girl to move away from them. The heroine assured that she only wanted to buy some flowers, but the boy did not believe a word of the noblewoman, thinking that she wanted to steal and sell the children. Elle understood why Jacques did not trust her, however. She could not help it, and decided to visit the children later. After that, Theodore talked about his speculation about Jacques, that he was from the Eastern continent. Recently, there has been an increase in the activity of sellers by people from the Eastern continent. Jacques was a victim himself, having been sold to a nobleman who abused him. Theodore pinned a flower to the heroine's hair, saying that the girl was much more beautiful than that flower. Elle explained that she had bought all the flowers from the children for her nanny, the princess, and the servants in the palace. A short while later, the princess in the palace was hysterical as her favourite heroine had gone all the way to the palace, but without looking in on her, just left, leaving some flowers behind. Suddenly, Pennine asked Theodore what he was doing in her office. The man was very curious as to why his sister had not sent him an invitation. Theodore realised that the princess wanted him to come to the party with Elle de Blois as a partner and make that conniving couple pay for what they had done. When the man decided to offer himself as a partner, the heroine began to assure that she did not wish to use Theodore in her personal affairs because she was not out for revenge. For her, this party was just a regular job, so she could accomplish her goal. Currently, Theodore revealed that Elle was not actually thinking of making him a partner for the party. The princess's plan collapsed before her eyes, so she was disappointed in her brother. Pennine realised that, being so conservative, Ella would never choose someone to whom she was not engaged to be her partner. The princess agreed to give Theodore an invitation if he could give her a small but very amusing performance at the party. A carriage pulled up to the palace, after which the girl ran out of it, heading for the princess's study. Pennine said that Charlotte was very late, for Dame Elle had long since left. The girl had heard that the heroine was heading to the palace, so she rushed here right after finishing her treatment. The girl was the eldest daughter of the Duchess of the House of Lorraine, Maria Charlotte. Contrary to her shy and weak character, she created a fan club of admirers of Dame Elle. She was an active organiser of club events, along with several other noble ladies. Charlotte was too fond of the heroine and constantly neglected her health, and even after her recovery, she was in a great hurry to get to the palace to see her. The princess revealed that they mostly talked to Elle about their troubled cousin Theodora. The girl thought that she was to blame for it because of being taken hostage, and if that hadn't happened, he wouldn't have been Ella's assistant. Charlotte spoke of the time Theodore took her hostage, ordering the princess to give him Elle de Blois so that she could become his mistress. Because of this threat, Pennine had no choice but to make the man the heroine's assistant. The girl decided to cheer up her sister by asking her to take the sweets to Lady Elle. Lucy was still embarrassed to return to the office, though she thought that Maurice didn't care about her, because all day he was busy reading reports about Zephyr. Suddenly the girl was pulled back by her long-time acquaintances. At the bakery, they talked about the guy Lucy liked, but rejected her. The blonde was jealous of her friend because she was very close to Elle. Suddenly in the conversation, Lucy heard that her friend had seen the carriage of Lorraine's house in the Eastern District. The knight was sure that Charlotte was under house arrest at the estate. Charlotte's carriage arrived at the November order. Maurice had received a letter about the girl's visit, intending to be her escort, but the aristocrat was arriving on personal business and did not need an entourage. Charlotte approached the door of the heroine's study when she heard an unusual noise. The girl entered and saw Ella sitting on Theodore. Charlotte ordered the man to get away from the heroine immediately, as he was not worthy of her. Later, the girl sat, unable to stop crying, listening to Elle's explanation. Deciding to get rid of Theodore for a while, heroine ordered him to take some papers to the central office. Before Charlotte arrived on Elle's desk, Theodore noticed a book on how to seduce the opposite sex. The man began to tease Heroine, whereupon they both tripped and the girl ended up on Theodore. Heroine assumed that aristocrat girl was close to Theodore, but that turned out not to be the case. They have never had a good relationship and have recently become even more distant from each other. Charlotte said that she had come to Heroine's house to give her sweets, but they had fallen down and gone bad. Despite all of this, Ella decided to try them, which really touched Charlotte. In one of the alleys, the thief met a cat, whom he immediately thanked for his help when the knights almost caught him. Earlier, he had picked up an invitation to a nobleman's party, so now he had a chance to steal the princess's necklace. At this time, the captain summoned Maurice to his office to inquire about plans to capture Zephyr, but they had not yet come up with a plan. The complaints from the bourgeoisie were growing day by day, and they had even offered a reward, and the knights still hadn't found a single lead. As a temporary measure, the commander had promised his superiors to catch Zephyr at this party, but the man was very worried that the thief would not show up at it. Maurice thought that he would definitely show up there. After all, he is very predictable, since the last time he showed up to steal Her Majesty's necklace. That day, the newspaper had front-page news of Theodore taking command of El de Blois. At that moment, the commander realized that Zephyr appeared whenever some other news came into focus. In the Western District, people didn't dwell on one issue, no matter how serious it was. Usually not even a week passed before Zephyr reappeared, for he wanted to draw attention to himself. Such a thing annoyed the captain, for they could lure him out, but it would all be in vain if the thief disappeared like the wind again. Maurice was alarmed by the fact that Zephyr was being quiet while everyone was focused on the party. The rain ended and Charlotte had to leave. The girl's health had improved, so from that day on she decided to stay living in the capital. Charlotte received an invitation to a party and wanted to know if Elle would attend it. Heroine said she had to protect the princess. Then the aristocrat was worried about her broken engagement and promised to protect Elle. In the carriage, Charlotte couldn't believe that the heroine had promised to see her next time. Suddenly, the girl noticed that Theodore was next to her. Charlotte stirred. However, the man showed her to keep quiet. She had a feeling that Theodore was going to eat her alive. The man questioned if his sister really liked Dame Elle that much. The heroine was the girl's prized knight, and ever since she saved her, the aristocrat really liked her. Theodore said that if Charlotte really cared for Dame Elle, then she should know her place. After all, he was risking his life to protect her. The fact that the girl was saying that Ella liked her, even though she didn't even want to do what he did, upset him greatly. Theodore returned to the capital ready to die, all in the name of protecting the heroine. So he advised Charlotte to show the same level of loyalty if she intended to continue to love his mistress. As Theodore stepped out of the carriage, he saw André, who wanted to pounce on him and avenge the girl's kidnapping. The man had heard that André was taken in by Lorraine's family after he was found on the verge of death. Theodore forgave the knight for his insolence and went to Heroine, as he could not keep his master waiting. Charlotte fell to the ground, not realizing that meant Theodore had returned ready to die. Claremont's son entered the order, while one of the knights was giving a report that nothing had been stolen on the rounds of the order's borders. The heroine was very angry, not understanding how Zephyr dared to mock the November order. There was a call on the wall to catch him if they could do so. There was a man sitting in a fabric store and didn't understand how the knights couldn't catch Zephyr since they had so many people. Suddenly, Elle and her entourage came into the store. Lucy asked the shopkeeper to remember the customer, for it was the only store in the order that sold dye. The salesman assured that he had too many customers and there was no way he could remember what the buyer needed. The heroine assumed that the thief could have made a purchase for a rather large sum, so she asked the man to look at the ledger. The seller did not want to give anything. Then Theodore attacked him, threatening to kill him. Later, Lucy regretted it, as they failed to get a single lead. The seller was not going to cooperate with them from the beginning, and that made Lucy very wary. Theodore said that the shopkeeper didn't want Zephyr to be caught, because even if he lived in the Order's territory, his status as a commoner was still the same. Lady Leburn didn't understand why it was bad to be a commoner after all, She was one, but despite that, she worked her best as a knight. The heroine decided to stay the night at the Order, and Theodore had to retreat to the Claremont estate to prepare for the party. The girl realized that she would eventually have to face Francois. They may be a knight, but half of her life was devoted to Francois and his fiancé. All this time she had been wearing horrible dresses just to make the man happy, but it had all been in vain. Theodore reminded her that Elle would not take personal advantage of him. The man was quite insistent, but the girl made it clear that he would not be her partner. She didn't have a single thought of gaining respect. Theodore knew that after all, his mistress was an honourable person, so she would never resort to such foolishness. But even so, he still wished that Ella would use him as she pleased. For that reason, he was on the heroine's side. The girl decided that for the sake of those who cared for her, she would promise that she would be okay. Later, the captain was furious with Zephyr's actions, as the party would be held today, and they had no leads. The man ordered the report to continue without Maurice, since he's no help anyway. They needed to discuss how they should ensure Zephyr's capture at tonight's party. The heroine started to say that since Zephyr had just snuck into the Order without their knowledge, they only had one way out of the November Order. Since it was always guarded by sentries, a thief wouldn't be able to get through undetected unless he was a knight. Also, they surrounded the building with a high wall and there was a cliff behind it, so it was impossible to get through there. In addition, they were the elite knights of the Ron Kingdom. Outsiders were forbidden to enter without special permission, such as a letter from the royal family. The commander remembered that the daughter of Lorraine Manor was visiting the Order that day. The heroine assured that the girl could not have been Zephyr, for she had been at the manor the entire time the thief roamed the streets. The knights had heard that she had visited them unguarded and met with the deputy commander alone, plus it was the only day Zephyr showed up in the Order. The commander stood up, saying that he had thought about it too, and now clearly realised that they had a traitor in the Order. They need to search all knights both inside and outside the Order and confirm their identities, and they need to thoroughly search all outsiders currently within their walls. Looking at Zephyr's warning, Maurice was pretty sure it wasn't a traitor. The most recent instance of Zephyr's attempted theft had occurred during Theodore's welcome party. Only their commander had been absent that evening. If any of the merchants turned out to be traitors, they would be thrown out immediately, endangering their lives, so there was no way they would be able to take such a step. Even if it was a knight working with Zephyr, the paint from the inscription would still get on their clothes. Maurice thought that if Zephyr wanted attention, it would be enough for him to steal and give things away to the poor like he always did. This was different from his usual behaviour, so Maurice needed to look into it. Suddenly, he noticed a small grass and finally realised Zephyr's main secret. At the orphanage on Rue Gautier, Jacques asks Enzo why he didn't tell him that all the invitations to the party had long since arrived. Enzo had hidden them on purpose, but the young man had already found them. He figured Jacques wouldn't be a part of it anyway. Jacques used to say that parties were only for the rich and noble. A party for all classes of society sounded good only at first glance, because if the children from the orphanage came, they would immediately be ridiculed. The only reason the princesses sent invitations to them was because they didn't want to look like hypocrites. Jacques argued that this time was different. Besides, if Zephyr showed up, the November Knights wouldn't leave it that easy, so he should go there to help him. The young man thought Zephyr was a hero, since he had invested a lot of money in their orphanage. At this time, the commander of the Knights was explaining the plan of action. One group would stay with him and work undercover, while the others would be assigned to their posts. The Knights were not happy because they would not be able to attend the party. The commander couldn't help it, as the invitation had come only to him. The man checked his invitation, but it was not in the envelope. One of the knights remembered seeing Lucy leaving the commander's office. The man thought he could still go as Maurice's partner, but the man had already left. Maurice had recently informed Heroine that he wanted to check something out before the party. Most of the people in the western region belonged to the bourgeoisie, so it would be impossible to ignore their power and influence. Besides, Zephyr was helping the poor by stealing from them. It didn't matter how much Zephyr looked like a hero in the eyes of some, as Maurice was sure that once he was caught, he would immediately go to the guillotine. At the party, The man decided that it didn't matter what happened at the party, as they would catch Zephyr by all means. At that moment, Theodore, the Duke of Claremont's second son, arrived at the party, and all the girls could not believe that so handsome a man had come to the party without a companion. Maurice asked Theodore not to expect to dance with Elle this evening, for she was busy looking for Zephyr. Claremont's son saw Francois and remembered his promise to the princess. Theodore drew his sword and decided to settle everything before his mistress came to the party. The princess was announced, after which Maurice asked to wait for Elle and not to make hasty actions. Pennine said they should drop all formalities and just have fun, since this party was for everyone, regardless of status. After a while, Elle arrived wearing the uniform of the 13th Moon Squad. This squad guarded the royal family, while the November Squad guarded the western district of the capital. At the knighting ceremony, Theodore had killed all the cadets who wanted to join the 13th Moon Squad, and as a result, Elle had been forced to join the squad in their place. The man was surprised, for she was now part of the 11th Squad. Maurice explained that the heroine was directly under the command of Her Highness. Technically, she was still half of the Royal Guard, so she was worthy of wearing the pure white uniform of that unit. Elle greeted the princess and asked her to give her first dance. As Maurice had expected, the heroine would definitely not retaliate in the cliché way of putting her rivals on display for all to see. Taking revenge and making Theodore her partner would make her feel better for a while, but it would only fuel scandal and damage her reputation afterward. No longer did the deputy commander need to smile strainedly in dresses that didn't even fit her. Adeline noticed that Francois couldn't take his eyes off the heroine and asked him to go out for a walk with her, but he wanted to stay inside, saying that the girl could go alone. Adelina decided to stay and be patient for a while, as it was soon to be her turn to strike. The dance ended, after which all the girls of the evening wanted to dance with the heroine. Enzo accidentally stepped on the princess's dress and fell on his knees and apologized to her. Suddenly, Charlotte offered Elle to dance with her, but before she did, she had to tell her why she was in the uniform of the Royal Guards she had left 3 years ago. When the heroine had joined the November Squad, Her Highness had authorized her by special decree to wear the uniform whenever she wished. Charlotte's favorite tune played, and Elle called her to dance. Maurice empathized with Theodore, thinking that he was incredibly lonely because of his hostess's popularity. The man didn't think he would be ignored to begin with. As long as Charlotte is in the capital, she won't take a step away from Elle. Theodore asked Maurice to get Charlotte away from the heroine as soon as the tune ended, but the man was watching intently as Lucy was being called to dance, so he didn't listen to the aristocrat. Seeing this, Theodore nudged Maurice to call Lucy to dance instead of standing together stunned. A new tune played, and it was Adelaide's time. The heroine was determined not to be tempted by the lure of pathetic revenge, since she no longer wanted Francois's love, and even so, she still wanted revenge. Elle approached Theodore, ordering him to allow her to use him. During the dance, the girl was worried a lot, as she usually led with a lady in the dance, and the one man she knew before was not particularly good at dancing. Theodore asked her not to worry about anything, and to focus all her attention only on him. Elle thought she was terrible for using Theodore for her revenge, but her focus was still on Francois. Although she tried to pretend that everything was normal, some part of her still couldn't forget Francois. Theodore realized how hard it was for the girl and pulled her against him. The heroine thought that she was used to hiding her emotions, but she didn't suppose that she would make such a mistake, and after all, she shouldn't have shown her weakness right now. The girl asked to let her go, but Theodore said that now she could cry all she wanted, since no one would see her behind his cloak. The man asked her to let out all her emotions and regrets, because just because she could hide something didn't mean everything was normal. The heroine recalled that she wanted to be sure that she was safe with Francois, but the 10 years that she'd loved him had been too long to be sure. Elle didn't think now was the time to heal her mental wounds. She wondered if this sadness, regret, or other feeling could one day become nothing to her. Theodore kissed the girl's forehead, saying that there was no reason to wait so long for the right moment. After all, she had the most attractive dog in the world, and he would always be on her side. The princess told her handmaiden about how she had made Ella read many romance novels, so that they would inspire her to come up with an original plan for revenge. Although the affair took a very satisfactory turn, it all went well in the end, and Pennine was amused to see heroine in such a daze. Francois did not understand what was going on here, for he was the only one to whom the girl showed this side of herself. Louise Tresse de Blois was a noble knight whom everyone admired. Francois thought that the heroine's feelings for him would remain unchanged even after the wedding was cancelled. After the breakup of the engagement, the entire aristocracy considered the man a traitor who looked down on his girlfriend. While Francois was gradually losing his reputation, Elle was still standing and shining brightly, as if her love for him had never existed. Everyone noticed that Francois had stopped dancing, whereupon they began to say that the reason for breaking the engagement was Elle's close friend Adelaide, who had stolen her fiancé. The girl ran away from the party, as things did not go as she had planned. She could not believe that Elle had brought the Duke of Clermont's second son, and danced with him as if nothing had happened. If the heroine had loved Francois so much, the grief of a broken engagement would have brought her down to hell. Adelaide went out onto the terrace, took out a glass and began pouring the poison into it, remembering that it should take effect after one day, so no one would suspect her. Suddenly the heroine approached the girl, wanting to talk to her for a bit. Lucy was approached by an unknown man who wanted to spend the holiday with her. Maurice approached her, expressing concern that she would get very drunk. Lucy did not understand why he thought so, because the man had not spoken to her since the incident in the bar. Maurice said he was worried about her, because when she got drunk she would confess her love to every stranger, and that would be a disgrace to their troupe. Lucy didn't know what the man was talking about, and then Maurice told her how she had confessed her love to him about 100 times. The girl assured that she would never do something so vulgar in a drunken state, for she had no habits with alcohol. Maurice recalled an occasion when she had drunk the knights with all her might, and even the commander was tired of her antics, so he stayed away from Lucy as much as possible when she was drinking. The man did not understand why the girl was having fun at the party in her dress, as she was supposed to be standing at her post. Lady Labert had left her post and forgotten her duties, and on top of that, she had disobeyed orders. The fact that she was in the centre of the party was a serious reason. Maurice decided to let the girl rest for a while, as her dress suited her very well. It was Lucy's first party, and there were many things she didn't know anything about, so she asked Maurice to accompany her this evening, and then quickly took him to another place. At this time, Theodore was looking everywhere for Elle, because as long as Adelaide is going to defame the honour of his mistress, she will not indulge in any dirty tricks, and because of this, he must stop her. Behind the man, the girls asked him to talk to them for a while, but he was very busy and wouldn't listen to them. Adeline offered heroine a drink of wine, and then the girls said they stood and talked, just like when she was just the duty commander. They did a lot of things together, and Adeline was angry at the girl, as she was taking all the work on herself. Adeline didn't think they were still in that relationship to be having such sweet conversations. She thought Ella would be furious about the broken engagement, but she was perfectly calm. The heroine recalled a popular tale among the children of the Round Kingdom. In it, the kingdom was ruled by a princess. Her lands were fertile, and she spent her days in luxury. Then one day the god of death appeared before her, saying that he had come to her at the wish of a neighbouring kingdom, and unless the princess ceased her rule, her subjects would die a terrible death. The princess refused, and then the god of death promised that great sorrow would fall upon her kingdom. The girl went through many hardships with her subjects. When the god of Smerit returned, all but the princess submitted to the sad fate he had prescribed. Some begged God for a quick death, and in the end, the luxuries the princess enjoyed were made from the flesh and blood of her people. Adeline didn't understand what this story had to do with her. Elle had said that the situation in Aquatan was no different. In the old days, the inhabitants died trying to pay exorbitant taxes. The only reason Aquatan lost and fell to them, in the hands of Blois, was that the citizens did not want to fight for their lands, and they abandoned them by fleeing. Adeline was actually the youngest daughter of the 6th Count of Aquatan, Adeline of Aquatan. At the party, the aristocracy mocked the common people. Jacques knew it would end this way. The princess was very bored, Plus, she thought something amazing was going to happen tonight. She had presented everything to them on a silver platter, but even Theodore was well behaved tonight. Suddenly, she didn't notice Elle at the party and realized that she might not be so boring after all. Adeline confirmed that she was the heir to the family that Victoria Blois, the former Grand Countess, had driven to war and ruin. The heroine realized that Theodore was right, and her friend held a grudge against her. It could be that Adelaide did not consider Elle as her friend from the beginning. The girl said that the purpose of the former Countess Victoria Blois was to gain power over Aquitaine at the expense of the marriage bonds. The Duchess's main desire was to free the inhabitants of Aquitaine, who were suffering from high taxes. Adelaide jumped up, thinking that it could have been avoided. Many people barely survived the events that took place after the war. Aquitaine is Round's most valuable land. Adele didn't think it was all done for the sake of the people, but it was really more of Blois's selfish desire. Elle revealed that she still had huge debts hanging over her. Aquitaine was in a terrible state after the war, and their former countess herself had taken part in rebuilding the lands, but it had been to no avail. There weren't many people left that were able to survive, so the Blois family had to borrow a huge amount of money to save Aquitaine in any way possible, and 3 generations later, the heroine was still working to pay off those debts. Adelaide had no idea that the Blois owed so much because of their Aquitaine. The girl apologized for losing her temper for a moment. Even so, she shouldn't have snapped at her dear friend. Adele realized how stupid and unforgivable to Elle she had been. If the engagement was broken because she and Francois really loved each other, there was nothing she could do about it, so she decided not to worry about it anymore. Even if Adele had been acting hypocritical up to this point, still, the heroine wanted to clear the air between them. The girl was the first person Elle had befriended in the capital, and she was dear to her. Adelina thought this was the perfect moment to make things a lot easier than she thought they would be. The girl offered to drink to that, and afterward, they would be best friends again. Adelina didn't understand why Ella didn't drink, but it had been 10 years since she had met Adelaide, so she knew her better than she realized. Every time she fixed her hair, she was anxious about something. The heroine smiled, saying that she never doubted their friendship. Theodore saw that his hostess was about to take a drink of wine, but he had no time to stop her. Suddenly, Adelaide knocked the glass out of the girl's hands, saying that they had never been friends to each other. Theodore was pleased to hear this, for Adelaide, according to the laws, had the same right to inherit Aquitaine as the Blois family. Because of this, the girl hoped that if the heroine didn't find out anything, the land would belong entirely to her. But she dared to raise her hand against Ella, so Theodore decided to execute her on the spot. Ella stopped the man. Besides, she didn't remember giving the order to kill Adelaide. Theodore did not want to upset his mistress, but the girl planned to poison her. If Ella became a countess and gave birth to a child, Adeline would never be able to return Aquitaine. Theodore thought that it was not too late, and it was only necessary to give orders, but the heroine ordered him to be silent. The girl ordered from now on not to dare even try to kill someone without her orders, because she did not need a knight for whom another's life was worthless. Theodore's face changed dramatically, and he fell into languor. Elle began to calm him down, saying that she didn't mean that she didn't need him. The heroine thought that Adele could definitely kill her if she wanted to, but she didn't, so they had to keep it a secret. Ella left for the party, and Theodore decided to clean up a bit. He couldn't believe that a girl would pass up a chance like this. The man also planned to use this chance to cause utter chaos. Theodore still wondered what it would be like to walk up to Adelaide and wave the head of the traitor, Francois, in front of her. It would be wonderful to throw Adelaide's head at his mistress's feet afterward. Theodore should have left the idea now, for his precious mistress would not have wanted it. The children from the orphanage couldn't believe their eyes and wanted to eat all the sweets of the evening. Enzo was very thirsty, almost trying the wine. Ella stopped him. It was a surprise to her that Jacques had come to the party, for he despised such events. The young man excused himself by saying that he had only come for one thing, and he had already asked the girl not to talk to him. Jacques was still cold, but the heroine hoped that he would let go of the past and become more open. Theodore returned to give the sword to his mistress, but suddenly the children jumped on him and began to hug him, for they liked him very much. The butler reported to the heroine that the time had come and they were waiting for instructions. Now that the party was in full swing, the girl gave orders to proceed according to plan. One aristocrat was missing a bracelet, and the heroine realized that they had the perfect chance to search everyone present. She announced that from now on, all the doors of the hall were to be closed, and the soldiers were to check for victims. Outside, Francois asked Adele to talk to him, but she wouldn't listen to him. The girl said that the man had obviously felt something when he saw Ella again. He had fallen in love with Adeline so easily, and now he regretted leaving heroine. If Francois really loved Adele, he would have gone after her as soon as she ran out. For a man, the girl's behaviour was very strange, because she was not like this before. Besides, Adele, who loves him, would never get angry. Adele admitted that she never loved Francois, and he liked her only because she wore beautiful dresses. The girl just wanted to use him, but her plans were completely ruined when Elle said she wanted nothing to do with Francois. Lucy was amazed at what was happening, as she and Maurice watched it all from afar. Maurice realised that a scandal was brewing, and that breaking off the engagement was Adelaide's plan. Lucy was going to tell Lady Charlotte now, and as soon as Ella heard about it, the news would spread. Suddenly, a banana peel fell on the girl's head, and she became very embarrassed. André came down from the tree and recognised Lucy, for they had played together as children. The girl remembered him. Besides, she had heard that Mole's company went bankrupt, and soon the man's parents passed away. At this time, Lucy lived in the Night Academy, so she could not help him. André asked not to worry, for Lady Charlotte had given him a new life, and he had left the old one behind. Maurice realised that the man had managed to remain unnoticed because he was Charlotte's personal knight, and he had dropped the banana peel on purpose to draw attention away from his lady. The knight on duty came running in, saying that they had a problem because Zephyr had shown up. Everyone in the banquet hall asked Elle to help find the thief. Lucy was out of breath when she arrived and didn't see Zephyr, but the knight argued that they just needed to start looking for him. André apologised for his absence, for even though he was supposed to be in the shadows, he should have been by Charlotte's side. The knights had gathered a list of those who had left the ballroom since the party had started, and now they were checking the garden. With the princess's permission, the knights began searching the evening's guests. One of the soldiers wanted to search the marquis, but he ordered not to touch him. Then all the aristocracy spoke against the search. Elle said that they should postpone the search. Then she took a glass of wine and spilled it on the head of that marquis, pinning him to the table. The man shouted that the heroine would not get away with it, but this was a party where no one would stand up for a marquis like him, due to the fact that the man's status did not matter at the party. Elle assured him that if a man were to have problems more serious than this, he should remember that once he refused the protection of the knights once, he would not be able to receive it in the future. The princess was very pleased with Elle's approach, but she could no longer stand idly by. Pennine said the matter was taking a serious turn, as her necklace had been stolen as well. A saddened Francois was sitting in the garden when Theodore suddenly discovered him. It seemed to him that the order to return to the ballroom concerned everyone, but the man was preoccupied with his grief. Francois said he should stay out of it, since it had to do with him and Elle. Theodore taunted the man, saying that his lover had left him and his past love had been stolen by his replacement. Francois refused to believe it, as Elle would never get involved with a madman like Claremont's son, and he was sure that the girl still loved him. Suddenly, Theodore thrust his sword near the man's ear, ordering him to shut his mouth and not talk nonsense. He could kill him here and now, but that wouldn't please his mistress. Francois assured that Theodore could do whatever he wanted to him, but Elle would not forgive him for that, since she loved him. The sergeant hit the man with all his might, after which he fell down, and Theodore put his foot on his face. Even if the heroine began to despise Theodore, he would only be glad. The man warned that if Francois appeared in front of Elle again, he would kill him, because rats should live quietly, keeping their heads down. At this time, the deputy commander couldn't believe that the princess had also had her necklace stolen. She thought that if Pennine stayed on the second floor after their dance, she would be safe. One of the people present accused Enzo of stealing, since he was next to the princess when he wiped her dress, Besides, he looked like an orphan and could have done it for money. Elle wanted to stop the men, but then she remembered telling Theodore that Enzo used to be a pickpocket, and once he had tried to steal from her. The princess hated most of all those who spoil her things, and the young man dared to touch her property right at her party. Pennine said that Enzo had insulted the honor of the royal family and the princess, so he should be executed immediately. The man had captured the young man just for the reward, but he thought execution was too cruel a punishment. Elle didn't understand what kind of nonsense was going on, no matter how angry Her Highness was, but execution without trial was unjust, and besides, it was not like the princess at all. The girl didn't understand what the heroine was waiting for. After all, she had given the order. Elle began to think that Pennine wouldn't do such a thing for no particular reason. In such a situation, a true Zephyr, if he is indeed in the hall, he would not allow an innocent person to be executed. As the sword of Her Highness heroine humbly decided to do her bidding and immediately proceed with the execution. The sword was already over the young man's head as the true Zephyr asked for it to stop. Everyone talked about equality and honesty, but in the end they didn't even think twice before executing Enzo, because he is a poor, helpless orphan. The heroine could not believe that the real Zephyr turned out to be Jacques. Enzo began to assure that the young man had nothing to do with it, and that he was the real Zephyr. The aristocrats couldn't figure out who to believe, since either way, Zephyr is either of the two of them. Maurice ordered Lucy to grab Jacques, but the latter put a shard of glass to his neck, saying that he still knew where his unsold stolen treasure lay, and if anyone touched him, it would never be found. Ella ordered Theodore to capture Zephyr, but Enzo stopped him, plus all the children of the orphanage started to get in the way of catching Jacques. The young man didn't know how to escape when suddenly the commoners opened a window for him, even though they knew they would be in trouble after that. Jacques pulled out a crossbow, saying that they couldn't catch him as they cared about the princess's safety. Then he shot the chain that held the chandelier above Pennine's head. The princess was greatly frightened and began to ask Elle to protect her. The girl asked Theodore to catch Zephyr. Jacques ran with all his legs, thinking that there was no way he would be caught that way, not after what he had to endure. One day, people found the young man and decided to take him with them, as the children of the eastern continent were very popular with the nobles. Jacques called for his mother, but those men had killed her long ago. The young man learned the truth only later, that those people illegally traded people from the east. At an auction, Jacques was bought by a bourgeois who had paved his way to the nobility with money. The man took out his anger at the nobility on the boy. Jacques had so much more to do, so he could not fall into the hands of the soldiers. It began to rain, and the young man sped on, thinking that all would soon be well, for he had never been caught, and it was only worth his while to get where he was going, and he would never be found. Suddenly, Theodore appeared before Jacques, saying that it would be better if he went with his mistress. Maurice appeared relieved that his hunch that the thief would return to the November order had been confirmed. The man really didn't know which way out the young man would choose, and they were lucky that the rain was on their side. They finally caught Zephyrus, whereupon Theodore swung his sword over his head. At this time it seemed to the princess that Ella was killing one by one, but then she opened her eyes and was able to calm down a bit. This situation reminded the heroine of the terrible incident that happened to her in the past. The girl assured that next time she would not be too late and would be able to protect the princess in time. The morning before the party, at a meeting of the knights, Maurice outlined the plan of action. There was groundwater beneath the ground, and therefore passages that no one knew about. It seemed to the man that this was the secret of the marshmallow's fast movements. In a place where nothing could grow, sprouts were still breaking through the tiles. It was as if they formed a path, which meant that water had been flowing in this place for a long time. The paint salesman was kind enough to show from the groundwater outlet to the knight's enclosure. He had been bribed by Zephyr and was helping him. Ella realized that it was raining heavily before Zephyr showed up near the Knight's Core, and he only had one choice. Since the November Knight's Core was on a high cliff, the water level wasn't that high here. The girl didn't understand how they could explore all the underground pathways that could be located all over the west side. After all, they needed time and resources to do so, but the party was tonight. That was why they needed to catch Zephyr at the party. After Zephyr had gone underground, they would have to rely on luck alone. Presently, Maurice admitted that they weren't sure where Jacques would run to until the very last moment. But luckily, it rained that day. Theodore struck the young man with his sword, and he lost consciousness. He later woke up in the prison cell of the Knights of November. Jacques was knocked out by the hilt of Theodore's sword. Since Zephyr woke up, Maurice decided to go to the main office to report to his superiors about catching the thief. The young man asked to untie him, but it was impossible as he had done too much damage. To mitigate his punishment, he should have told them where he had hidden the loot, but Ella realized that such a desire was absent from Jacques. The knight wished to call Lady Laverne for questioning, but the heroine ordered her not to do so, for the young man was a step away from the guillotine anyway, and Laverne must not get her hands dirty with him. Jacques argued that they could do whatever they wanted with him, because he had long ago gotten rid of everything, and even if he had kept something, he would never tell them. The heroine reminded that if the young man kept silent, the children of the orphanage might get hurt. Jacques asked not to touch them, accusing Elle of lying. He felt sorry for the guys who thought heroine was a noble knight, since she was a hypocrite. The girl was well aware of this, for people thought she was noble because they only saw her good side. However, some said that she was still a bit different. For the sake of her mistress and all that she had sworn to protect, Elle was always willing to get her hands dirty. The heroine considered further conversation a waste of time, so she ordered Jacques to be brought out and the sentence carried out. The young man was blindfolded and led to the guillotine. Jacques was not afraid of death, for he had decided so when he committed his first theft, except that if he disappeared like that, it would all be in vain. The knight led the boy to the place, after which he was greatly surprised. At this time, Theodore still couldn't believe that Zephyr turned out to be a child. The heroine didn't care about his age, as his degree of crime was very serious. A lot of knights went crazy during the time they were trying to catch Jacques. Theodore finally realized why the girl was bluffing when she talked about her nobility earlier. He didn't care what would become of Jacques, but Elle wasn't like that, because no matter what happened, she needed to personally capture Zephyr at all costs, because the only way to protect him from the nobles was to lock the Knights of November in the fortress. The girl assured that her duty was to catch the thief, and since Chucky wanted to help disadvantaged people, she did so. Theodore said that even if the boy became a knight, various obstacles awaited him on his way. That was why Elle wanted to inform him about everything in advance. Then the man realized how noble she was. While Theodore was tying the girl's shoelaces, he got dirty. The man was ready to do anything for his mistress, because he really liked her smile. Jacques' blindfold was removed, and he found himself near the core of the Knights of November. He thought he was being led to his execution, but was informed that from now on he would become a cadet of the Knights of November, in honor of his punishment. Jacques would remain under supervision, and would not be paid until he returned all the money he had stolen. The knights didn't understand what Elle was thinking when she did this. She was short of money, so she had to go into debt to pay Jacques' bail. The young man couldn't believe the limit of human stupidity, that they had caught a thief and now they were going to let him go. And besides, he might not want to become a knight. Jacques thought that all aristocrats were hypocrites, so he couldn't understand why they would make such sacrifices for him. Theodore, together with Elle, almost came to the main office, but the girl was uncomfortable with the words that the man in the dungeon said. The heroine thanked the man for seeing her off, saying he could go back to his manor. Theodore was wearing only one shirt. Besides, he was very wet, so Ella felt sorry for him. The girl couldn't allow such a thing to happen since his sister and mother didn't approve of such a thing. The heroine said that she had lost the desire to report to her superiors, and the man's clothes were not yet dry, so they could go to her house and have a cup of hot tea. Later, at the house, the heroine could not understand why the man was behaving very nonchalantly and was in no hurry to get out of the bathroom. The girl was beginning to regret bringing him, for at this rate she might have woken the nanny. Suddenly, the nanny appeared behind Elle, asking what the heroine was doing and when she had returned. The girl claimed that no one was in the bathroom, plus the woman could have slept late since she had decided to get ready for work on her own. The nanny left, And the heroine began to think that this would be even better, because the woman was very worried about her after the breakup of the engagement, so she did not want there to be a misunderstanding between them now. Theodore came out of the bath wearing only a bathrobe, which caused Elle a lot of embarrassment. At the operational meeting of the Rawn Kingdom Knights, the commander was very tense, for he had promised his superiors that they would catch Zephyr at this party. The unknown nobleman said that they had noticed strange movements recently, so the princess's anxiety was increasing day by day. They had discovered illegal human trafficking from the east. The man felt that if this situation reached a diplomatic level, it could do great damage to the trade relations with the east that they had worked so hard on with Her Majesty. The aristocrat had gathered everyone to discuss measures of action before things got worse. Someone had to take the initiative and deal with everything. Suddenly, one of the people present suggested that the Knights of November should be entrusted with the task, as there were so many talented people there. He said they had Theodore, who had killed all the prospective royal knights at the inauguration 5 years ago. The commander did not want to take it on, so he said it would not be enough to make the West completely safe. Mr. Blanch expressed that this matter would be taken up by him personally, as he is the commander of the Knights of October. Elle, along with Theodore, went into the girl's room where she was very nervous. She wished to send the man to bed as quickly as possible so that she could get him out of bed as early as possible in the morning. The heroine wanted to throw Theodore a blanket on the floor, but he laughed at the cuteness of his mistress as she avoided his gaze. The man assured that he could only sleep in the bed, as he had never been on the floor before. Ella offered Theodore to sleep on the bed, while she would sleep on the floor, but this option did not suit the man, as he wanted to sleep next to his mistress, promising not to molest her. At night the girl couldn't sleep, for the day had come when she would get into bed with a man. As soon as Ella touched Theodore, a shiver ran through her body. She did not like the fact that the man slept quietly in the same bed with the girl, not seeing the limits of his actions. Elle did not know whether Theodore was sincere in saying that he loved her, but for her, there were only pluses in this situation. From the moment the engagement broke up until now, thanks to Theodore, the heroine was able to forget about her sadness. If he had not been there at the party, she would have felt very bad. Then, because of her feelings for Manhwa, she could just run away like she had done before. Since the man was asleep, Elle decided to thank him, for she owed him a lot. Thanks to Theodore, she was able to get the reward for catching Zephyr. The girl thought that the man would not wake up anymore, so she could carefully go to sleep downstairs. However, Theodore woke up saying that it was better for him to leave. The heroine realized that the man had heard everything, so she decided to leave the conversation and go to sleep downstairs. Theodore couldn't let her do that, as he was visited by bad thoughts very often. The man said that Mistress was the best person and she was obliged to keep him by her side. However, the more time Theodore spent with her, the worse it was for him. The man liked Elle, so he wanted to know if she liked him, as he no longer wished to force her. The heroine did not know how to act, however. Today she did not want to refuse him. Theodore was very glad that the girl did not refuse him, because then she would have hurt his feelings a lot. The man pulled Elle against him and kissed her. Theodore said that even if one day his mistress disappeared, he could only live on if he kept that moment in his memory. He wanted to never let heroine out of his arms, so that she could never leave him. In the morning, Theodore woke up, but there was no one in the bed but him. At headquarters, the soldiers did not understand what had happened to the deputy commander. Someone said that the girl came to work at 4 a.m. and had been sitting in her office ever since. One of the knights brought documents to sign. She wanted to talk about the underground currents. Since the network of labyrinths was too intricate, they couldn't explore it thoroughly. The heroine woke up earlier than Theodore, so she wouldn't cross paths with him. She couldn't think of how she should look into the man's eyes now. Suddenly, the girl was called out by Knight as Elle was pouring tea on her papers. Later, Lucy was shocked that heroine's friend had kissed her subordinate, with whom she wasn't even in a relationship, and now she didn't know what to do. Elle said that things didn't stop with just a kiss. Then Lucy began to think that those had gotten to the very end. The heroine ordered the girl not to scream, but she did not understand it, because Maurice was not with them, and it was about Elle's friend. not about herself. The girl thought that she would need Lady Laburn's help in any case, because judging by the party last night, she was very popular with men. Lucy thought that Elle's friend regretted the kiss, but the heroine wasn't so sure. Outside Maurice's office door, the man asked Theodore not to wait and to boldly enter. Elle became uneasy, as she thought that the man might have heard everything. The girl was afraid that Theodore would now tell everything, so she decided to leave immediately by jumping out of the window, but the man followed her, although it was the last floor. The heroine did not manage to escape, as she ran into a dead end, where Theodore caught up with her and suggested that she go to breakfast. The man began to say that last night he had made a mistake, so he asked to forget about everything, because it would not happen again. The heroine thought that it was even better, because this way she would not have to take responsibility for all this, but her soul became so empty. Theodore noticed the sword unexpectedly falling on the heroine's head, so he held her close to him, telling her that she had nothing to worry about, as he would always be there to protect her. Everything was already fine, but the man didn't want to let the girl go. Now was the moment when he saw the sword pierce Ella's body. It was just like when Theodore had fallen to his knees, asking God to turn back time before the girl had died, before everything had started. The man found himself in the moment when he had killed all the members of the Royal Knights, and then he was very glad that he had met Ella again. Then Theodore decided that no matter the nightmares and sorrow, even if darkness came, he would still protect her. At all costs, being by her side, he had to protect the heroine always and everywhere, to keep her smiling image forever. Andre was worried about Charlotte, who had fallen asleep on the couch. Suddenly the girl jumped up because of a nightmare, as she kept remembering that day, and going crazy. She was haunted by the feeling that Theodore had stolen Lady Elle from her. The man opened the door of the room, and on the threshold was a crowd of heroine's admirers wanting to meet the president of her fan club. Theodore realized that what had happened would make it awkward for them to be together for a while, but he was okay with that outcome. The man entered the heroine's office, where she informed him that Theodore was already late, and she didn't care that only 20 seconds had passed. The man glimpsed a mountain of paperwork, after which Elle explained that she was in no condition to do paperwork, so Theodore would have to do everything alone. She warned him in advance not to think she was trying to get back at him. The heroine did not know what to do, because she liked being together with Theodore very much. The man right now wanted to hug Elle tightly, but he could not get close to her before the time, because she could run away again. Theodore would finally make the heroine fall in love with him. No matter how much the girl thought, she couldn't understand what was on the sergeant's mind. When they were cadets, the man was the one who was always getting into all sorts of trouble, and she knew Theodore could be so carefree, but she couldn't believe he didn't care about their kiss. The man liked that his mistress was staring at him intently. However, she could soon make a hole on him. Theodore realized that he wouldn't get anything out of the girl, so he decided to guess what the heroine was thinking. On the Eastern continent, there was a new technique that allows you to know the thoughts of another person with just one look. When Theodore had travelled those lands, he had learned this technique. The man decided not to procrastinate and make a test, and to do so, he moved as close to heroine as possible. She understood perfectly well what Theodore was making up, but she didn't understand why the man was so serious. The man in her ear was saying that the girl was thinking about her actions if Theodore kissed her again. The girl wanted to pounce on her dog, but then a knight entered, reporting that there had been a murder. The victim was a young girl who was discovered by a patrol of knights when they were patrolling the street after lunch. Because of the marks on the victim's neck, the preliminary cause of death was considered strangulation by the knights. The heroine could not believe that someone could do such a thing to a very young girl, so she ordered her to report the identity of the deceased and the results of the autopsy when they were ready. Theodore didn't look well, and he was sweating. Elle thought that if the man was so crazy, he would not be frightened by the sight of a dead body. The girl wiped the man's face with a handkerchief, assuring him that in the West, murder cases are solved in no more than 2 weeks, so the culprit would be caught. That wasn't what Theodore was worried about, but Elle couldn't find out the real reason because she had to be excused. What worried the man was that there was an overbitten pennine apple lying next to the strangled girl's body. there was only one person who specifically grows this disgusting fruit. The main villain in the Snow White story, who wanted the heroine dead, was the Queen. All the children of the orphanage were amazed by the new uniform of the knight Jacques. When he turned 15, he would be sent to military school. The young man was worried that Enzo would not be able to receive proper treatment without him, but he did not want to talk about it. A few days ago, Ella came to Enzo, saying that Her Majesty would support the treatment of sick children. At that time, the young man had given the princess's pendant to save the children. Jacques wondered how long they had known he was Zephyr, and as it turned out, they had known all along. In the library, Lucy did not understand where and when Lady Ella and Theodore had managed to kiss. The girl was jealous, because Maurice stared at the papers every day, and they had no time for a normal conversation. Lucy decided to probe the ground, so she asked Maurice what he thought about the rumours that they were a couple. The man offered to admonish the other knights if the girl was that uncomfortable. Lucy felt very bad, because she tried to use the rumours to somehow develop their relationship, but her boss turned out to be insensitive. The girl couldn't even look at Elle and Theodore, for even one look at them made her die of envy. Theodore had said that when Elle would give the command sit, he would follow it. The man didn't like it, but he thought there was nothing wrong with being obedient. The pair practiced some commands, after which they were stopped by Lucy with a look. Maurice thought the case was strange as he read the latest records, but they didn't have the right information in them either. The heroine had also looked through everything, but with no result, and it was obvious that such cases were not reported to the main office. Maurice could not understand why such a high-profile case was not documented in the archives. Theodore said that 5 years ago, before he went wandering, a similar murder had taken place near the Earl of Lorraine's estate, and both victims had been killed in a similar manner. It was getting late, so Lucy suggested they postpone the search and go to the boutique. The man wanted to follow his mistress, but Maurice grabbed him by the arms and led him to try on his clothes. The man explained that, while investigating the murder, the knights could dress in casual clothes, concealing their identity, and patrol the street in them. Since Theodore was attracting attention in many ways, he should have disguised himself. The man didn't care what he wore, because he wanted to patrol with his mistress. Maurice told him that Theodore would go to the appointed place and could meet the girl, after which he handed over the letter. The letter asked the heroine to come to the fountain at noon, dressed as modestly as possible. The girl called out to Theodore, but he could not believe that Elle was standing before him, for she wore a beautiful dress, which she had never worn before. Theodore was supposed to be the heroine's fiancé for the day, but the man did not expect such an embarrassing conspiracy. The man decided for today to forget who they are and quietly spend the day together. Theodore took the girl by the hand, after which they went for a walk in the park. The candy shop caught Elle's attention, but she wasn't sure if they could find any leads here. Theodore said that the victim was often in this place, so they could find out some information. The girl remembered that there had been a similar murder near the Earl of Lorraine's estate. She wanted to know if, after the inauguration, Theodore had remained living on the Count's estate. It was possible that 5 years later, the murderer had reappeared and killed Anna Sophia. It was sad to the man that beside him, the girl had no other thoughts than work. They were now playing the role of lovers on a date, so Theodore stabbed the food on a fork and held it out to the girl's mouth. The man started to talk about last night, but the heroine decided to shut him up before he said anything else. She needed to feed the leftovers to Theodore and get out of the restaurant. The man accidentally dabbed his finger on the cake, and then he wiped it on the girl's nose, leaving a custardy ball of icing on it. Elle looked for something to wipe it with, however the man quickly licked it off. Even though he didn't like sweets, he really liked eating it this way. As they walked down the street, Lucy told Jacques that the victim of the murderer was a girl of 12. Theodore said he had heard of a couple of missing children of about 15 near the Earl of Lorraine's estate before he'd set out on his wanderings. Those kids were from an orphanage, so Jacques had to be careful. Today, Lucy wanted to go on patrol with Maurice, but instead she was assigned to watch the boy to make sure he didn't run away. She was indignant because Maurice was always in the office, so she hardly ever got a chance to see him in his everyday clothes. Suddenly, the knight saw the girl thanking André for helping her carry the heavy basket. Usually the servants did all the shopping and stocking up, but Monica liked to go shopping herself. The girl said it was almost dinner time, and she had no one at home, so they could go to her place. Lucy greeted the girl, asking André if he could leave the princess so easily. Jacques noticed that André didn't smell of anything, so he was considered very strange and amused. The man could not join the dinner, as he had to leave on an errand for the Lorraine family. Monica was sorry, for she thought they would be alone together. Lucy praised the girl's house, for it was the largest among the aristocrats of the West, but Jacques hooded himself, saying that he would not eat. Suddenly, Lucy remembered that Zephyr's main enemy were the aristocrats. At this time, Heroine couldn't believe their bill at the restaurant. Theodore examined his pockets, but found none of the money in them. The cashier began to threaten that she would not let them go if they did not pay. The cafe employee apologized and let the couple go, as their order had been paid in full. The heroine could not understand who could have paid such a considerable sum for them. Suddenly, Francois appeared in front of the couple, surprised at the sudden meeting. The princess did not understand why her aunt had appeared to her so suddenly. The woman saw something grand, that's why she was in such a hurry to Penine's reception. The Duchess stated that Theodore and Lady L would be getting married soon. The woman was in that cafe, and from the conversation, she realized that the couple hid their identities to enjoy a secret rendezvous. In his mother's eyes, Theodore was shy and soft-hearted, so he showed courage to let their relationship begin to grow. The princess realized that the woman had caught them on a secret patrol and made up her own ideas, but it was funny, and because of that, the girl decided to leave everything as it was. The Duchess wanted to organize the wedding in the palace, and Elle's presence would be enough, and the dowry would not be a problem. The woman wondered why the princess would not eat the apples, for it was the first time she had seen those lying untouched. It was all because of a murder in the West, where an apple had been found next to the victim. Pennine thought it was all pure coincidence, and she shouldn't dwell on it. She should just force herself to eat them. In the middle of the street, Francois argued that he was right after all. After that party, the man thought only about Elle, considering himself indecisive, because only after the breakup he realized how important the heroine was to him. The man recognized his mistakes, wanting to bring everything back. Theodore ordered him not to bullshit, reminding him that he had warned him not to approach him. The men almost started to fight, however. The girl said that she did not know Francois. Theodore recalled the conspiracy, after which they left Francois, who promised to write the girl a letter. Elle was shaking all over. However, she just laughed from the expression on Francois's face when she said that she didn't know him. The girl was surprised that she actually didn't have that much trouble controlling herself when meeting a man. Besides, now she was glad that she saw Francois as a rotten person. Theodore strongly wanted to hug Heroine, though he wanted to wait for her indifference to turn into sympathy at first, but he couldn't hold back any longer. The man was about to confess his feelings, but suddenly the girl noticed a glint on the water and decided to check it out. At this time, Lucy offered Jacques the bread she had bought with her last money, but the young man was not going to take it. The girl realized that Jacques would be embarrassed, because after all, the aristocrats were Zephyr's enemies. Since it was Lucy's last money, the young man promised to return it. The girl was unwilling to do so, asking to be addressed properly. Even if Jacques was uncomfortable, there were no bad people among their knights, so they could all be friends. The young man admitted that he didn't like those who talked and made so much noise. The heroine didn't understand why Lucy was fighting with Jacques, since she was sending them out on patrol. Lucy asked how the couple's date had gone. Ella thought Jacques was using the patrol as an opportunity to get away, but as it turned out, she doubted him for nothing. Theodore hastily admitted that he wouldn't run away either, and would always be there to protect the girl. Elle praised everyone for their work and wanted to go to the building, but Lucy suggested that they stop for a snack, since they hadn't eaten anything since morning. André was sorry that the princess could not go with him. It had been a long time since Charlotte's departure. Besides, Mr. Antoine missed her very much, and because of the murder, he was afraid to leave the girl alone. Charlotte promised that everything would be all right, and if anything, she would turn to Ella. The thought of breaking up with the princess kept André from pulling himself together. The man claimed that if the princess hugged him, he would feel much better. The girl hugged the guy as he had become very dear to her, so she would miss him a lot. The Knights were having a quiet dinner at the restaurant, while another murder was going on that contained that very green apple. In the morning, Lucy wanted to sleep badly, and she really disliked the morning patrols. She didn't understand why she was paired with Jacques again. Even though she was a pretty girl, it could only complicate things. Suddenly, a woman ran up to Lucy, wanting her to help Monica. Monica was 15 years old and had been found dead at 6 in the morning at dawn. At the request of the Cully couple, Lady Laverne had personally conducted an examination of the scene. Lucy had known the victim since childhood, so she was now in shock. After a brief report, she took time off work and went home. The commander thought that there had already been 2 murders in the West in the last week, but he believed that the 2 crimes had been committed by the same person. It was obvious, as both victims had been strangled in a similar manner, the murder weapon being a light scarf. Judging from the marks on the neck, there was a possibility that the perpetrator was equally good with both hands. And as we know, an overbitten pepin apple was found at the crime scene. The perpetrator was violent, as Monica Cully was murdered in her own home. No signs of forced entry were found, so the killer could have been someone the victim knew personally. The commander wished to gather all the forces, but Theodore assured everyone that everything would go on and on as the Queen repeats the plot of Snow White. The man was talking about a murderer who appeared in the West, and he was greatly impressed by the fairy tale of Snow White. Snow White, who by the evil Queen's design ate a poisoned apple and died. Next to the bodies of the victims lay overbitten pepin apples. Theodore thought that everything was in order, and there was still a long time before Ella's execution, but he didn't think that the murders would happen so quickly. Morris thought it was just an assumption, but the criminal did imitate the plot from the fairy tale, so the man did not want to find out about the 7 deaths. The heroine urgently decided to go to the palace, because she could not sit idly by, as the killer could get to the princess, and she just wanted to be near Pennine as her protector. Theodore assured her that she couldn't do that, because it would cause even more anxiety. If Ella came to the princess at such a late hour, it would greatly alarm her. Despite her cold appearance, the heroine was a very gentle person. The man believed that the culprit purposely leaves Pepin's apple to tease the princess, for in this way he was referring them to the story of Snow White. Theodore was still able to convince the girl, which made him expect praise from her. Lucy cried quietly at home, thinking that if she had stayed with Monica that day, all this would not have happened. Suddenly, the girl heard a strange sound outside the door. Someone had broken the fence and was trying to fix it. Lucy came out and saw Theodore and Morris scaling her fence, and the heroine trying to help them. The Knights brought in the groceries, for they thought getting everyone together for dinner would be a great idea, for Morris would be uncomfortable sitting alone in the company of Elle and Theodore. Theodore tried to hammer the peg into the ground, but he couldn't do it. The man assured that he was not hurt at all, but Ella was worried about him, because the attitude of the princess and the countess to her depended on this finger. The heroine tried to mend the fence, but Lucy thought it would be better if they left it as it was. The fence was completely ruined. Lucy decided to fix it herself, but she would like to be compensated for it. After dinner, Morris noticed that the girl lived all alone. Suddenly, the man noticed a card for Monica. The girl explained that it was given to her by the parents of the deceased, so she treasured the message. The heroine realized that Morris had her map in his hands. While on patrol with Theodore, at the spot where the first body was found, they pulled the same map out of the river, and the victim's name was written on the back, but they never realized what it all meant. Lucy revealed that Charlotte had created similar cards for members of Elle's fan club. The heroine was very surprised, as she had no idea of such a thing. Both of those killed were children from aristocrat families, and nothing else connected them. Elle admitted that even if the club had been set up by Charlotte, she would still have to investigate. Lucy had recently heard a rather interesting rumour about Princess Charlotte, as if she was staying at the Earl of Lorraine's estate, which was located in the eastern part of the capital. And apparently there was a room in the estate where even servants were forbidden to enter. There were witnesses who said they heard horrible noises coming from that room. The heroine had an idea, so she asked Lucy and Theodore to join the CPE. 5 years ago, Charlotte came to Elle, telling her about the creation of a club to honour her. The girl thought they were academic circles where they discussed knights or a directed group on improving the security of the kingdom. Ella said that Charlotte had recently made a mould of her hand, so she wanted to ask the princess why she had done it. Lucy and Theodore arrived at the Count's house. Elle's fans appreciated Theodore and decided that he was worthy to be Elle's assistant. The girl was served tea in a mug from a limited edition version of the club's merchandise. Lucy was uncomfortable that the cup had a picture of the boss who made her join this fan club. While everyone's attention was focused on Theodore, Lucy decided to do some reconnaissance. Suddenly, Charlotte entered the room, whereupon the man explained that he was now also a member of the Elle Lovers Club, and he would be sad if he didn't join it. The princess reminded him that the first rule of the club was that no men were allowed to join. The girls stood up for him because he worked with the heroine, and thanks to him, they could get all the latest information about her firsthand. Theodore did not resist and headed for the exit. On the way, he said that he did not know the purpose of Charlotte's club, but that all the victims of the murderer who had suddenly appeared in the West were members of it. The man had no desire to pry into his sister's affairs, but her protector was under suspicion, for he had met the victim on the day of the murder. Charlotte sent a man to the Earl of Lorraine, and when he returned, Theodore could find out everything. The man returned to the hostess, who thought that joining the club would take longer. The girl was embarrassed by the pillow with her picture on it, but Theodore was unwilling to throw it away. The man wanted to take her to his room, and whenever he missed his mistress, he would use her. Theodore wondered where the girl was going as she put on her dress uniform. In the carriage, the man realized that Ella was not in the mood. The killer had shown up sooner than he thought he would, so Theodore was beginning to fear that he wouldn't be able to save Elle at this rate, so it was better to tell her everything. If the man had told her everything, he wouldn't have had to patronize Elle so much and follow her everywhere. Theodore began to doubt that the girl would believe him, but he hoped that, seeing his sincerity, the heroine would definitely trust him, because the girl was very kind. Only the man was about to tell everything, as Ella said that they arrived at the monument of Anna Maria and Monica Calli. Because the investigation wasn't over yet, they couldn't have a formal funeral, but at least they could be remembered that way. Theodore didn't understand why the girl was trying for children she barely knew, and she asked him if he felt sorry for them. Elle couldn't think about it, and no matter how much Theodore was called a wild dog, she wished he could share this sadness with her. The man thought wrong for a moment, for the heroine had always been kind, and she could never remain indifferent and alien to trouble and sorrow. Because of this, Theodore could not let the girl carry the burden alone. The fan club members were jealous of Lucy, as she saw Ella every single day. The girls were curious as to why the knight joined the club, so they started throwing a bunch of theories. Lucy couldn't stay in the club, so she decided to retreat to the restroom. The girl had a chance away from prying eyes to find out what the two victims had in common besides club membership. If Lucy could prevent another murder, she would go all out. The knight was just about to enter the room when suddenly Charlotte stopped her, thinking that she was lost in the mansion. Lucy had no choice, and she opened the doors right in front of the princess, after which she was greatly surprised. In the room was a picture from the evening where Elle was dancing with the girl. Also in the room were many gifts they had received as donations in Elle's name. Charlotte said that although they seemed to be just a group of heroine fans, they were actually full of people she had once helped. Since they all wanted to help Lady Elle at least a little in return, having gathered with such intentions, they decided to make donations on behalf of the heroine. Whatever the princess was hiding, Lucy had only heard good things about Charlotte, so this story didn't surprise her at all. In spite of all this, she thought it was all strange, for rumour had it that horrible screams were coming from that room. At that time, the girl told the princess that it was getting late, and it was time for her to go to bed. They hadn't been able to contact Ella yet, as she was too busy working. Pennine was worried, for it was today that the scarlet full moon rose in the sky, which carries a truly bad omen. 5 years ago, the princess had stayed with Charlotte when her parents travelled east without her. The girl was very bored in the palace, but she couldn't go out alone either. Charlotte offered to leave the palace in secret, saying that she would help the princess to do so. In the morning, the maids brought penine porridge, as she said she was not feeling well. The princess met André in the garden, who Charlotte said was supposed to be waiting for her. The girl decided to break the arrangements and go exploring the neighborhood herself. Then the princess helped her future assistant to escape from the falling apple crate, Pepin. The girl thought that the princess was lost, so she wanted to take her to her, but she quickly and unnoticeably disappeared. Suddenly the girl came across people who kidnapped her and imprisoned her in a dungeon. Then a girl came to her with a blanket for the princess, after which she went into her cell and pulled out a sword from the blanket, saying that she was from the royal guard and reinforcements would be arriving soon. The rescuer could not wait for help, so she decided to lead the princess out alone. The girl began to say that the girl could no longer be kept in the dungeon, as she had caught a cold, but the man was against it. Elle took off her wig and went to deal with the kidnappers of the princess. The girl thought that the heroine would die, for it was very hard for her to cope with everything alone. Suddenly the princess woke up with tears in her eyes. Because of the scarlet moon, Penine was very worried, and Ella was not around, so she had nightmares. The princess noticed the heroine sleeping next to her. The girl began to remember how Ella had killed all the kidnappers, and she couldn't take her eyes off the bodies of people. After that incident, heroine had become Penine's only defense. There were rumors that she was kidnapped by Count Lorraine, but she didn't want to suspect Charlotte. The girl confessed that on the day of her abduction, she did not remember at all the expression on her sister's face, who had helped her escape. The princess began to wonder what would have happened if Elle had not come to her aid, but she believed that no matter how much time passed, the first thing the heroine would do would be to rescue her. The Duchess hadn't been able to see Theodore lately, but she was glad that Elle's presence was giving him strength. The man had to save the heroine. They needed to stop the Queen's assassin before Elle was caught. That was the highlight of Theodore's past, yet there was no way he could remember it. The Duchess spoke of Theodore's marriage to heroine, but the man did not listen, immersed in thought. The knight thanked André and Count Christophe for their help, as André was soon to be removed from the list of suspects. Several people confirmed that they had seen the man at the Count of Lorraine's estate at the time Monica Cully had been murdered. On the other hand, 5 years ago, there had been a murder of a young girl near Lorraine's estate. Ander became agitated, but the Count began to say that it was all his fault, since for his own safety, he could not leave the boundaries of his estate, and sooner or later had to deal with people who spread rumours. Christophe assured him that if something like that really happened, Her Majesty would not leave him alone so easily. The knight apologised and went to headquarters to report. Ander had to go back too, for he had never imagined that he would be a suspect. The Count believed that the man was the reason it was over. And besides, Antoine and he had not seen André for so long, and since he had always been a very obedient and kind boy, he had never given Christopher any trouble. The man reminded them that they still needed to find the ships that were illegally transporting people for trade on the eastern continent as soon as possible. The next day, the Countess thanked Elle for arriving promptly for lunch. The heroine heard that it was about lunch, and she didn't understand why there were so many flowers in the room. The woman said they needed to discuss the royal wedding, and it was supposed to be fancy. The Duchess wanted to choose the flowers that would best suit Lady Elle in advance. Theodore thought that in the royal family, only he and Charlotte were old enough to marry, so he didn't understand why his mother invited Elle. Theodore's mother asked him to choose the flowers that he should carry. The man preferred green grapes as his choice, for he thought the flavour of fresh grapes suited heroine very well. It was definitely strange for Elle, but he thought the same thing. Even though Theodore realised that his mother had messed something up, he was curious to see the girl in a dress. Earlier, the soldier had reported to Theodore that they had secretly followed André to the Count of Lorraine's estate, but they had found nothing suspicious. The man was worried that the Queen was somehow related to Count Lorraine, and André might have been involved in the murder. 5 years ago, while running away, Theodore found himself within the confines of the Earl of Lorraine's estate, where he stumbled upon the body of a young girl who had previously gone missing. That girl had been murdered in the same manner as all of the recent victims, and they had all been strangled. the Queen may have rehearsed the murders in the West to eventually tighten the noose around the princess's neck. The next heirs to the throne were the twin brothers of Her Majesty Claire, Earl Christopher Lorraine. According to the law of the Kingdom of Rawn, Charlotte was to be the next ruler. If the princess died at the hands of the Queen, the Earl would benefit greatly. Elle showed herself to Theodore in a wedding dress, but she was very embarrassed, because it was the first time she was wearing such an outfit. The Countess said that it was her wedding dress, and even if the heroine would not wear it at the wedding, she would still like to see the girl in it. Elle looked very pretty in that dress, and the heroine hoped her husband would return when he heard about the wedding, as he had always had a special fondness for Theodore. The man assured her that his father would not return because he had died during the Earl of Lorraine's rebellion at Her Majesty Claire's coronation. Theodore wished his mother to accept it, because she herself knows perfectly well that his father will not return. The heroine realized whose wedding it was supposed to be, so she bluntly said that she and Theodore had a purely business relationship. Because of her selfishness, Ella made the Countess think something she didn't know, and it made her feel very uncomfortable. Later, Theodore apologized to the landlady, as he thought his mother had messed something up. The heroine was embarrassed because her feelings made her forget her duties for a moment. She could not believe that she had allowed herself to dissolve in a situation where the princess could be in danger. Theodore realized that the girl was saying that there was nothing between them. Besides, the man himself said that it was all a mistake. Claremont's son claimed that he lied because he thought Elle regretted that night. Theodore said that he would take back what he said about the mistake if the girl admitted that she didn't regret that night. Ella thought the man was toying with her, since she didn't regret their kiss, but from the moment he called it a mistake, she began to regret what she had done. When the heroine was around Theodore, she felt good, but she didn't want any more misunderstandings like that to arise. Right now, Theodore saw Ella as someone who had just joined the Knights of November, for she had a stern expression on her face with no emotion. It was better for him if the girl yelled at him, then he would have a chance to make things right. The man stopped the departing Ella, saying that he had made a mistake. All the outpourings of his heart to her were always sincere, and he really liked her. The heroine thought that the man, as always, did not think about the feelings of others, since he was always so selfish. The next day, the girl began to treat the man coldly, which was immediately noticed by Lucy. Seeing that Maurice and Lucy were slacking off from training, the heroine ordered them to come to her office after class. Later, the girl was shocked at the amount of papers on which were written down all the addresses of the young girls who were members of the fan club. The heroine corrected that there were lists of minors. Since they didn't have any evidence of the murder at the Earl of Lorraine's estate, they couldn't claim that only girls of that age were targeted. Maurice felt that if they didn't narrow down the search radius, the only thing they would be left with would be to patrol the streets, and then they definitely wouldn't be able to protect everyone. Theodore couldn't figure out exactly what was on Elle's mind, and now it was back to where they started. Not cold, but not friendly behaviour either, just simple indifference. It wasn't surprising that only the party had helped the girl, but it seemed she had decided to pretend like nothing had happened between them. In the lists, Theodore noticed that among the similar names, some stood out more than others. Among the names he had heard at Elle's trial were Audrey, Brebery, Elizabeth, and Raphael. The most important memory was inaccessible to the man, but he definitely saw the names of the Queen's victims. Theodore stated that although it would be a small step, they would be able to prevent more murders. At the meeting, the aristocrat recalled a rumour that the Knights of November had finally managed to figure out the intended victims. The captain said that there was a man among the knights who had been chasing the Queen for 5 years. Currently, based on the data they had received, they wanted to reinforce the patrols, and if the aristocrats trusted him, they would be able to accomplish the mission. The man wanted to summon Lady Ella and interrogate her, for news had already reached them that both victims were members of a special group of people who associated themselves with Lady Blois. The commander assured them that the fan club had been a coincidence, and that it had nothing to do with the case, and that the heroine was very busy with the investigation. The man assured that they would definitely not allow a third murder, and that the higher-ups should trust them. The aristocrats said that they too hoped that the day when Lady Blois would be held fully responsible for the murders would never come. The commander returned to his office and called a general meeting so that he would no longer suffer humiliation from the main office. Elle believed that the higher-ups had the situations under control. The man couldn't say that because of the fan club, the aristocrats suspected heroine of the murders. The commander said that there were people sitting in the head office who would go to any lengths for the good of the royal family, so they had to try their best too. From that day forward, the man declared a general assembly, with no one going home until they caught the killer. Lucy asked Theodore to tell her that he didn't like it. The commander was now blinded by rage, but if the man, as a member of the royal family, objected to him, the man had to listen to him. Theodore was looking forward to the training camp because they had to eat and sleep together. The training camp gave the man a chance, so he had to solve the misunderstanding with Elle at any cost, and this time he had to save the girl from accusations. Maurice didn't understand why he had to leave his home and sleep with everyone else in the dormitory. He thought that if it was his uncle's idea, everything would be back to normal in a couple of days. Maurice thought that in all likelihood he would be sharing a room with Theodore. The man entered his office, telling Theodore that he had some sleeping habits. Suddenly, he realized that Lucy was in his office, changing into different clothes, so he quickly ran out of the room, saying that he hadn't seen anything. Later, Maurice apologized to the girl, but she did not understand it, because the man had seen her change into her training uniform many times. Lucy thought that the man had gotten the wrong room, but he came to room 302 correctly. The girl was originally supposed to share the same room with Lady Elle. Suddenly they realized that it was all thanks to Theodore. The heroine constantly only moved her things from place to place, but today she just wanted to rest. The lights were off, so Elle thought that Lucy had been asleep for a long time. The girl covered herself with a blanket, which made the heroine think that she was still blaming herself for Monica Cully and was still scared to fall asleep in the dark. If things continued like this, the Queen could still kill her victims. Elle believed that through these training camps they could improve discipline and it could eventually lead to catching the killer. The heroine wanted to suggest to her superiors to use this opportunity and strengthen their physical training. The commander's voice was heard outside the door and the girl wanted to go to open the room, but Theodore stopped her as she had come to his room by mistake. At the port, the man considered themselves lucky to find the illegal traffickers, but Blanche had to report it to head office. The commander of the Knights of October did not want to bother, for they could have caught the traffickers themselves. Suddenly, a girl caught Mr. Blanch's eye. The commander wanted information about the owner of the ship behind her. The girl said that she shouldn't be threatened and that if they wanted to scare her, they had better stay to their south. Blanche argued that they were indeed in charge of the south, but he knew Ella well, so there should be no problem with their activity to the west. The man was sure that the ship was about to leave for the east soon, so he asked again about the commander of the ship. The girl did not understand why the knights were suddenly so interested in the ship, but she was the captain of the ship, so they could not question her anymore. In the room, Maurice thought that someone had really messed up the key, so he decided to warn Elle as soon as possible. Lucy stopped the man, thinking that Theodore was with the heroine. Besides, Maurice himself saw that the couple had some problems. Lucy offered to let them be alone, and for the first time in a long time, Lucy wanted to be alone with Maurice. The girl was embarrassed, telling the man to stay in her room for a while. The action returns to Theodore's room when he stopped Elle. The man said that he would be fine, but that if his mistress was caught now, trouble awaited her. The commander came out of the shower and was surprised to find the lights off and only Theodore alone sleeping in the room. Somehow, Elle managed to hide under the blanket over the man's body, but she was too close to Theodore, so she wished she could move away from him. The commander asked the man to tell Maurice when he returned that he was expecting him in his office. The captain, seeing Theodore, realized that he had a rather large belly, as if he had a man hidden under the blanket. Elle began to think that nothing could be kept from the commander, but she didn't know how to proceed now. The captain continued that no matter how Theodore tried to hide his belly, his eyes could not be fooled. A real man had to take care of his belly, so he suggested Theodore to increase the load at the training. The heroine was embarrassed, since the man's heart was beating quite fast. Even though he behaved calmly, but still he was very afraid of getting caught. The captain left, after which the girl crawled out from under the blanket, thinking that there had been some mistake and they had gotten their keys mixed up. Theodore wrapped the heroine in the blanket, for if he left it like that, she would not agree to listen to him, so he took her prisoner. The man said that since the day the girl had left him, he had hardly slept since his mistress had never once looked at him. Ella wondered why she was still mistress to Theodore. He had shown up 5 years after his disappearance, always brushing off when the heroine asked questions, but that then and now, her questions hadn't exactly changed. Then the man announced that he had been chasing the murderer from the Earl of Lorraine's estate for 5 years, and even at a recent meeting, he, somehow, knew the names of the murderer's possible victims in advance. Theodore assured her that even if he had explained, she still wouldn't have believed him. The man didn't trust Ella at all, which meant she couldn't trust him either. Her job was to protect Her Majesty, and she was glad that she finally managed to get rid of her feelings. The heroine didn't hate Theodore, as she just couldn't let her feelings, which she herself didn't understand, take over anymore. The man said that the girl could still find out what those feelings were, even though he could not explain everything, but she could check what happened that night, and even every minute spent next to the mistress was not with regrets for Theodore. The man's heart began to beat even harder. He was saying that if the mistress didn't believe that he really didn't regret anything, then she could check again. At this time, Blanch thanked the girl for her cooperation, as he was just curious to know if this ship was departing today, when it would arrive west again. The girl realized that this man looked like a bandit, and was obviously very familiar with Elle. Heroine and Adelaide still had unresolved issues. Even though the ship was leaving today, the girl wanted to check if everything was in order and collect the hiring money. Maurice thought that Lucy was still angry with him, for she was unusually quiet. The man decided to talk about work, since he didn't know what else they could have discussed. Maurice said that Heroine was the only one who took part in all the activities without any objection. The knights were silent, as they were both very confused and did not know what to say. Maurice wanted to discuss the plan to catch the Queen, because after Theodore had given the names of possible victims, he thought it would be more reliable to guard the houses where children with similar names lived. Maurice did not understand what he was saying, thinking that Lucy was tired for the day, and he was talking about work. The girl could not say anything against the man's words, but she did not understand why the man avoided her gaze. Maurice felt guilty that he had inadvertently spied Lucy changing her clothes. Suddenly, the girl stumbled, and then Maurice was afraid she would fall, so he quickly pulled her against him. It was the first time Lucy had ever seen a man blush like that, and he seemed very hot. Maurice worked hard every day to solve crimes. Even on the day when Lucy was mourning Monica, the man came and cooked dinner for her. The girl said she guessed that Maurice had been up all night trying to unravel the murderer's plan. The girl brought the knight some medicine, but he had urgent business to attend to and left. The captain met Maurice in the corridor and wanted to talk to him and Lady L, but the man asked to address him later. The commander didn't understand why his nephew was so agitated, and he hadn't seen him with the heroine, so he thought they'd had a fight. Theodore asked to test his loyalty once more. Elle realized that if she hesitated like that, there would be no point in constantly pushing Theodore away, except that the look on the man's face was driving her crazy. She thought that if she let the man break her, she would surely regret it. Suddenly, the heroine saw that the door had been open all this time, which made her even more worried. The girl, together with Theodore, fell behind the bed so as not to attract unnecessary attention. The man apologized, for he did not know that he was so unpleasant ale. He decided to go out for a while and distract passers-by while the girl was leaving the room. Suddenly, the heroine pulled Theodore against her and started kissing him. Suddenly the girl stopped, wishing that they would forget about this moment, as it was a mistake. Theodore began to think that she began to think that way because of the way he called such an incident a mistake. The girl admitted that she didn't know herself, because she wanted to take responsibility for her actions that day. Knights were supposed to stay pure, and that meant they always had to be able to take on that burden. Ella was too naive, however. Then and today, she did not want to run away from Theodore, so it could not go on like this. The girl disappointed the Countess, and the reason for that was that she had initially instilled in her wrong expectations. Now, in the face of what she had to defend, she had not the courage to take the responsibility. In the morning, when she saw Maurice, Lucy asked him about it, but he would not listen to her, for he did not want to blush, as he had the night before, in front of her. The chapter came, and the heroine announced that from this point forward, the Knights of November were going out on increased patrols. Every house in the West where underage girls lived was to be under surveillance. Children who fell into the category of possible victims of the killer were separated into lists and were to be monitored around the clock. Lucy noticed that Theodore was out of sorts, and yesterday she had tried to buy more time for them, but he and Elle had never worked out. The girl expressed regrets to her partner, since Theodore didn't have a date, so she decided to go with him. On patrol, Elle realised that all the families on the list lived in the slums. Maurice wasn't a particularly strong fighter, so he wasn't sure he could handle the patrol. The heroine said that the man didn't know how to fight, and she would have to cover for him if necessary. An hour ago, Elle had ordered Maurice to go on patrol with her. She had switched with Lucy, but for some reason the man was bothered by the look on Theodore's face, and he hoped the man wouldn't retaliate against him. The heroine apologised for doing things her way. She thought about going on patrol with Lucy, but she felt that Maurice wouldn't ask too many questions. The man put his hand on Elle's head, remembering his childhood, when she was always a head taller than him. Back then, the girl was better than him in wrestling, exercise, and sword-wielding. Maurice had always been too smart and skipped lessons. Besides, he was even better that way. Countess Thruss, her predecessor Victoria de Blois, and even his mother had always expected more from Elle and demanded nothing from Maurice. Still, nothing had changed, and the heroine was still superior to him in everything. The girl said that she was only human and made mistakes too, since she had taken him on patrol. They were trapped, so Ella ordered the man to run. Maurice couldn't run any faster, and except to stop and protect him, the heroine saw no other way out. The bandits demanded the silver buttons from the knight's clothes, but they were unwilling to give them up. In her office, the princess ordered Francois to rewrite everything again, for the handwriting gave away the traitor's identity, and she did not like it. Since Ella was the reason she had taken a man to be her assistant, he had to do his best. The girl came in and offered to have dinner with the Queen tonight. This afternoon, Penny and Charlotte were going to pay a visit to the November Knights Corps. Elle was now busy with the Knights training camp, and the princess was bound to see it. Francois asked to go with the girl, promising that he would listen well to her and not cause trouble. The man had poisoned many letters to heroine, but he had not received a single reply, so at least from afar, he wished to look at her. The princess thought that Francois should have tried sooner. Besides, such pathetic men were of no use to anyone. Maurice thought they were in a confusing situation, because when it came to fighting, everyone was puzzled. Suddenly, a man started being attacked, and Ella was worried. Maurice asked not to worry, as he too had learned the art of swordsmanship from Teresa. The man's modest skills were enough to deal with people who couldn't even hold a weapon, so he decided to defend his life himself. The attacker easily struck Maurice with a strong blow, causing him to fall to the ground instantly. The bandits were frightened and immediately left the scene. The girl asked Maurice not to pretend anymore and stood up, as everything was already behind them. The criminals fled, and the knights were lucky enough to find a pouch with the image of Callie's trade crest on it. Callie's trade group was the largest in the West, so they had no need to rob people, so they weren't traders, but sailors. The attackers didn't have local accents, and they had never held weapons, and they looked very shabby. The trading company was run by Monica's parents, and after the assassination, there was no special control over the outlets, and many merchants didn't get paid. Elle claimed that the sailors had no intention of killing them, so there was no point in chasing people who were only following orders. Maurice thought that the other victim, Anna Maria, was also the daughter of a merchant. They sent a delegation to the east every year, which meant that the Queen's aim didn't stop with the princess. She deliberately wanted to sabotage the development of the merchant business in the East. It was very hard for Lucy, and she would never have dreamed that her first task would be to wash dishes. Theodore did not succeed and broke the plate one after another. The girl said that she would finish it herself, but the man decided to finish it all, so as not to go mad with boredom. Theodore was beginning to think that he shouldn't have done anything with Elle at all, but he couldn't pretend it hadn't happened either. He still felt like he was holding heroin in his arms. Lucy wondered what they had already managed to do in such a short period of time. The girl asked to tell everything so that she could give the man advice. Theodore refused, because if Elle hated him even more, he would wish to settle the score with his life. Suddenly, a knight ran into the kitchen, who was finally able to find the captain. The man didn't understand why there was so much noise, because now the most interesting thing was starting. The knight hastily announced that the princess had arrived at the core of Knights of November. Charlotte thought they would inconvenience Lady Elle if they showed up at the core uninvited. The princess purposely didn't say anything to her, because she wanted to see her. Most of the knights were very nervous about the princess's sudden visit, since the heroine had not returned yet. Theodore couldn't believe that Pennine had come to such an unassuming place. The girl said that she always had time to meet Elle, but the man's face held more interest for her. In a glimpse, Theodore noticed Francois handing over a letter, which made him have even more questions. Later, the girl decided to watch the knights training. In training, the girl happened to see Jacques, who had once threatened her life, now serving with the Knights of November. A soldier reported that Lady Elle was seen at the gate, so they could go out to meet her. Once outside, Charlotte saw the heroine standing on a tall wooden tower. Elle fell down, and Charlotte went into a daze, thinking she was dead. The princess didn't understand why the girl was so afraid. After all, there were mats below, and it wasn't heroin. Maurice approached Charlotte, wanting to help her to her feet. The man carried the girl to the nurse's station, assuring her on the way that Ella would not jump from there. Lucy happened to meet Maurice, who was holding Princess Charlotte in his arms. At that time, Francois was waiting for Ella near the knight's headquarters. After a while, Theodora visited there, intercepting the man's note about the meeting. The man saw Francois's letter for the heroine and began furiously snatching it away. Elle de Blois was accused of a series of murders and treason. This time Elle's betrayal also began with letters, but outside, a large army was waiting for her under the banners of Blois. Everyone knew that the heroine was taking the breakup hard. Everyone thought that Elle de Blois would open the gates, but she did not. Theodore came out of his memories, and after reading the letter, he did not find anything interesting in it, because the content of the letter was different from his memories. Francois asked him to return the letter and not to bother him, because Theodore and Elle were nothing to each other, so he should not interfere. The man reminded that the heroine had traded her former lover at the last party. Francois did not think so, because Elle was a knight with a capital letter, and Theodore was not, besides. He was the most hated representative of humanity for the girl. Francois thought that Theodore was just a wild dog that carried violence and easily took people's lives. And because of that, Elle couldn't love him. There was a cliff behind the man, and he didn't know how to swim. However, he knew exactly how to get away from Theodore. Francois provoked the man, saying that the man was even now thinking to kill him. So in the end, he wouldn't be able to always be around Ella, since he was the complete opposite of the girl. Heroine's voice was heard behind them, asking what was going on here. The man realized that this was a great opportunity to get rid of Theodore. Francois began to cry, accusing the aristocrat of bullying him, even though he had done nothing. Theodore didn't think the man could win Elle over to his side with such pathetic attempts. The heroine ordered Theodore to take his hands off, as she had to deal with the same problems now as at the party. They had to catch the murderer, and the man only added to her worries. The girl did not want to hear excuses, because she was sure that among the knights there should not be those who did not value human life. Elle did not need an assistant who does not know how to listen, so from today, Theodore ceases to be a knight. Francois was glad, because he turned out to be right, and Elle hated people like the man the most. The aristocrat handed the girl a letter, but she simply tore it up, saying that he did not care about her wishes. One night, Charlotte caught Theodore with the corpse of a strangled girl in his arms. Someone had said that the girl had a weak body and a man couldn't kidnap her. The unknown men refused to do as he wanted, so it infuriated him, and he took Charlotte with him. Theodore didn't care for the girl, however she could be a perfect match for the exchange, for he wanted Elle de Blois from the princess, for she was the only one who could be his mistress. Charlotte awoke while the heroine sat by her bedside for a long time. She had been worried when she found out that the princess was in the infirmary, which was why he had come, but she was glad it was all over. Ella seemed very sad to Charlotte, thinking it was because of Theodore. It would be good if it was, because then she might have a chance. Charlotte thought Ella was cute, so she didn't want to give in to Theodore so easily. She decided to gradually reveal her feelings to heroine. Elle wanted to call the doctor, but the girl stopped her, saying that she had business to attend to. Charlotte tried hard to gather courage and say that she liked the girl. The princess still couldn't admit it to her, asking if she could choose a song for heroine. This was the first time Elle had seen the princess like this, and as it turned out, she was even weirder than she thought. Heroine thought Charlotte saw her face and decided to cheer her up a bit. In the evening, Elle had said that next time she herself would come to the palace to see the princess. Pennine thought that a lie, since the heroine was constantly busy, and even today, when she herself came, she remained unseen by anyone. Before leaving, the princess reminded her that Creation Day was coming in a couple months. Creation Day was the Round Kingdom's biggest holiday, celebrating its formation. It was officially considered the time when the Round Kingdom received delegations from the East, and since the kingdom was also sending its delegation to the East, very soon the protagonists would begin their bargaining. Despite the fact that every year everything went smoothly, for some reason this year she had a bad feeling about it. So in order to make sure that the bidding was successful and without incident, the princess entrusted Elle to oversee everything. The girl trusted Pennine and gladly agreed to carry out the mission. The heroine started to return, but suddenly Theodore hugged her, saying that he was wrong and he would never devalue human lives again. He was going to, like a shadow, quietly follow the mistress, and even if the girl hated him, he wouldn't do anything. The man begged no more asking to leave Elle. The next morning, at the meeting, the heroine informed everyone that bidding was starting the next day. Theodore was nowhere to be seen in his seat, however. The girl realised that she was to blame for this, as she was the one who had chased him away. Maurice asked Ella to sit down and rest a bit while he continued his report. That night, the heroine gave Theodore a week to pass on the business. Even though the girl couldn't live up to the princess's expectations, she could definitely tell Theodore that she thanked him for his work. A week had passed since then. The plan was that today was the day Theodore was to leave the Knights for good. The heroine herself wanted that, but for some reason her soul was aching more and more. Her whole head was full of thoughts, and she didn't know what was right and what was wrong. In the city street, Theodore did not understand what Maurice had forgotten near him. The man, because he was always in the office, had not learned to ride, so he avoided the races every year, and he had followed Theodore because it was his last day as a knight, so Maurice wanted to see him off. A certain nervousness in Ella had been very striking lately, and it looked like it was because of Theodore. Maurice wondered how long the man was going to hide from Ella, and if he wasn't thinking of leaving, where they were going on horseback. Some time ago, the princess had told Theodore that Moreau's daughter had been murdered, and she was sure it had been done on purpose on the eve of the auction. The bidding was to begin tomorrow, so the man thought the Queen must have shown up. The men arrived at the home of Audrey Moreau, who was not a member of the fan club, but her father bids every year to be part of the delegation. Theodore knocked on the door and was very surprised when it was opened by a girl who looked no more than 3 years old. The girl told him that the men would not be able to see her sister now, as she had gone to meet the blonde-haired boy. At night, Theodore came to the place of Elle's execution, which cast a wistful gloom over him. Then, before the clamouring crowd stood the defenceless Elle de Blois. Then her severed head rolled across the scaffold, and Theodore sat with her head in his own hands. Without her, the man's life had stopped. Theodore cheered up, for he had to save the girl after all, or he might lose her again. The man thought of dealing with everyone like last time. However, Ella only hated him more. A killer who only knows how to pick defenseless children as his victims and kill them is bound to fail to get the heroine's death. Later, Theodore arrived at the estate, where he met Andre. The man assumed that Theodore would capture him as soon as he entered the estate. The aristocrat said that was the point, since every time after the murder, the Queen left a pepin apple at the scene. Theodore asked if the man had really just wanted apples, and if he had killed Audrey Morio, whom he had met today. Andre said he hadn't killed her, and besides, they were from the same town and had been friends for a long time, so he didn't understand why he had to kill her at all. Without any evidence, Theodore accused an innocent man. Andre thought that the man was doing this to him because he was loyal to the Count of Lorraine. However, there was no way to get the Count of Claremont back. The man thought Theodore would hit him, but the man only recalled the rumours that Andre had been picked up abandoned in the cold. In gratitude for that, for the sake of Charlotte's protection, the man was ready to do anything. Theodore had made a mistake, and he should not have jumped to conclusions about Andre. If not for the humble servant, the girl would have been very easy to catch. The man ordered silence, because if Theodore touched Charlotte, he would not leave it like that. The man let Andre try, except if he touched him, O would pay with his own life, and then he wouldn't be able to protect his mistress. Lucy came running in, saying that there had been a third murder, and Lady L had been taken to the main office. Andre expressed regret, for now Theodore would not be able to save his mistress. 2 hours earlier, Matteo Perun had been found dead, and Ella had been detained. The captain thought it a foolish idea to gather all the knights in one place, for it made no sense. The man wanted to go to the palace, as the princess had to know the truth. Maurice didn't think it was necessary, as it was the princess who could give the main office the power to arrest Elle. The man didn't think that the main office would pin these murders on heroine. In such a situation, it was only possible for one person to save Elle, so Theodore had to hurry. It was the same this time, and everyone was waiting for Elle to fall. Everyone hoped that the heroine would fall, because they were interested in watching birds of the highest flight fall and crash. In the main office, a soldier announced the start of a meeting for the dismissal of Louise Theresa de Blois as Deputy Commander of the Knights of November. The headquarters had received confirmation that all of the murderer's victims were connected to Lady Blois's fan club, so they could not allow such a dangerous person to continue to hold her post. The heroine realized that the Queen wanted to put all the blame on her, the protector of Her Majesty. Voting began when the members had to show cards to decide the girl's fate. Half of the members of the meeting cast their votes. They only had to get one more affirmative vote for the vote to be over. A noise was heard outside the door, where the guard was unwilling to let the guest in, as there was an important meeting going on in the office. Theodore broke into the meeting room, saying that he had come for his mistress. One of the meeting participants said to ignore it and finish the votes. The last card for dismissal was about to be raised, but Theodore cut it in a flash. The heroine began to think that the man wanted to cause a massacre, like at the inauguration. Theodore put his sword back in its scabbard, got down on one knee and apologized to his mistress for being late, because he had come for her. It was an unprecedented case, to run away so irresponsibly, and Elle could not imagine such a thing, but for some reason she wanted to follow the man. The soldiers blocked the way to the exit, but Theodore was persistent, and one of the voting men allowed them to pass. He allowed the man to leave, but only for Her Majesty's sake, and there would be no second time. Later, the heroine was certain that Theodore had left, and she did not understand why he had returned. The man said that he never went anywhere, as a faithful dog would never leave his mistress. The heroine decided to interrogate in a different way how long ago she became his mistress. Theodore considered that let from nothing binds, but among the thousands of reasons why they are now holding hands, he could not single out only one. One day, Theodore brought his brother Robert to show his mother the flowers he had picked for her to lift her spirits. The man said that only the Earl of Lorraine's estate had so many flowers, and apparently Theodore was seeing Charlotte again. Theodore's brother reminded him that he had ordered him not to contact the Lorraines, for their father had not disappeared, but had been murdered. The situation at Claremont Manor was depressing at the time, for much time had passed since his father's disappearance, but his brother's anger and his mother's sadness had not abated. Several seasons changed, and everything that happened became familiar. Theodore had changed too, but his life as the second son of the Count of Claremont was not as bad as he thought it would be. At the time, Theodore was living his life without thinking about anything. That's when Elle de Blois came along. Then the girl stood up for the Academy cadet, offering a fight with Theodore. After Elle's victory, the man took her to a bar, where she confessed that she loves Francois. Earlier, Theodore thought that the heroine is the same emotionless doll as he is, but at that moment he was somehow pissed off by the presence of Elle de Blois. One of the graduates said that he was sorry that the girl had to join the Knights of November, as she was supposed to get into the Royal Guard. After the initiation ceremony, it was quite some time before they met again. 5 years later, Theodore received a letter from Augustus. After the initiation ceremony, the lives of the man and Elle changed. The heroine, as she had hoped, entered the Knights of November, while Theodore became part of the Royal Guard and the princess's personal guard. After a very short time, he and Elle had a conversation. The girl had heard that someone had kidnapped the princess a couple days ago, and Theodore had saved her. The man thought that the girl, like everyone else, was trying to get connections in the princess's personal guard, but the heroine was not like that, and she just wanted to greet a former classmate. Elle asked not to be misunderstood, for she thought Theodore was having a hard time because of his duties. Charlotte came running in, calling the man over to the tea party the princess was hosting. Pennine thought she was bored at her place, and yes, Theodore was not happy being her personal guard. Besides, the man could save her for fun. Charlotte assured that it wasn't true, because Theodore had risked his life. But the man confirmed the princess's speculation. He acted because he had no choice, because he did not want to anger Her Majesty Claire. Being the princess's personal guard, Theodore lived for 5 years, and then he received a letter from his father. Augustus called for his son to come at midnight, to the East Gate, as he wanted to see the man. The first feeling Theodore felt when he read the letter was anger. The man decided to go to the meeting, as he just wanted to confirm the horrifying truth. That was when something strange happened, and Theodore's foolish choice led to Elle de Blois' arrest. He didn't want that, and he sensed that something was wrong. 5 years later, their first meeting took place. The man asked what Ella was doing, because obviously everything was planned to accuse heroine of treason. She knew who had opened the gate of the headquarters, and who had gotten her arrested. The girl knew that Theodore had opened the gate, since she had been near the eastern fortress that day. The man didn't understand why she wouldn't just tell the whole truth, that in an attempt to stage a revolt, Theodore had gathered a fake army under the banners of Blois. Theodore did not care even if he was executed, because he had no regrets. The heroine realized that wealth and high position does not make a person happy. The girl was not going to tell the truth to the knights, but she had no desire to die like this. Elle had to take care of her family, as she still had a little sister to take care of. The man became furious, not understanding why, then the heroine would just not tell everything. The girl said that perhaps if she told everything, Theodore would be arrested, he would confess to treason, and he would be executed. However, she didn't want that. In her eyes, the man was striving with all his might to live. Then Theodore realized that until he met Elle de Blois, he had no idea that anything was wrong. Knights had a knack for helping others in need, and the man could not understand that until he tried it himself. Elle assured that she would try to overcome these difficulties, and they would definitely live. Let the struggle for survival continued. Heroine became Theodore's whole life. The girl was surprised that the man would really come to her every day, as promised. Theodore still looked like he was carrying all the suffering of the world inside him. She knew what was bothering the man, so she asked not to worry. If Theodore acknowledged her innocence, she could honorably hold out until the end, for she was willing to die for him. That the man fell in love with heroine was definitely a predetermined outcome. One night, the girl told me that Maurice's mother had been her mother's deputy, and they had grown up together. And when they had learned that Elle had been arrested, they had cried very bitterly. Theodore didn't ask for that story. He wanted to know more about Elle. They both wished they could have met under different circumstances, and they didn't think it would turn out like this. Theodore said that if the heroine disappeared, he would never be able to fill the void that would be left after the girl. The memory of that moment turned into an eternity for Theodore, and he followed the heroine. The decision to execute Ella had not been made yet, and the man was already thinking about the worst outcome. The girl was not going to die so easily, however. Even if a sad end awaited her, time would pass and Theodore would forget her. She believed that even if it didn't happen, it was no big deal. The man was never able to forget her, because from the moment Elle had given her life for him, only she could be his mistress. Currently, Theodore was very happy that he had chosen heroine as his mistress. If he had said in advance that the girl was his man, one day it might happen. In the hallway of the main office, the commander, along with Lucy and Maurice, were already waiting for the couple. In the evening, the commander thanked everyone for coming together at such a late hour. Today the knights gathered to celebrate Elle's return. Today, the heroine wanted to get drunk. She'd already had so much to drink, but for some reason she couldn't calm down, let alone get drunk. Her heart was pounding hard because she thought Theodore was gone, but it really wasn't. The girl wanted to thank him, but she still had no way to do it, as an hour ago she was taken into the crowd, drinking. Theodore sat down next to heroine, however, at that moment and did not know what to say. The bar was too noisy, so the man suggested they go outside to get some fresh air. Ella wanted to tell Theodore something, but he fell on the girl, as he was very drunk. The man was so sad that he wanted to die. The heroine was also uncomfortable, so she apologized for being too harsh with Theodore, as seeing the two of them she said too much. Ella thought it would be better if Theodore was just around, rather than her thinking about it all the time. So she wanted to say that she was wrong, and the man could go back. It wasn't an order, and she respected Theodore's opinion, so he could safely refuse. Right now, Theodore didn't care about Elle's mistakes, and if she didn't want to, she could refuse. But Mistress didn't need to take responsibility for him today, because he just chose to be there for her. After they kissed for about half an hour, the girl asked Theodore to go to the bar first. It had to be better that way, because then there would be no unnecessary rumours and misunderstandings, and also, the heroine really wanted to come around a bit. The man kissed the girl, adding that she did not wish him to return sooner, as she would miss him. At the entrance, Lucy met Theodore, and noticing his reddened eyes, thought that they finally talked to Ale, but it ended badly. The girl decided to help the man by offering him her cocktail, but then suddenly the heroine entered, ordering her not to do so. Alcohol could loosen Theodore's tongue, and he could start talking nonsense in front of the other knights. The man decided to take a drink, but Ella cut him off with a swift motion. Maurice helped take Theodore to the dormitory and gave him the keys to his room. The gathering was coming to an end, as their goal was to protect Elle. If there was another murder, they could confirm heroine's alibi with a general collection. There was no point in that now, but now they had to be more careful, because the head office would not forget Theodore's prank so easily. Lucy got drunk and decided to go with the girl to the dormitory. Lucy asked Ella if they had really been together like brother and sister since they were kids. She wondered if he liked Princess Charlotte, or if they were already dating. The heroine thought it was ridiculous, since she had known Charlotte for 5 years, and until now, every time it came to Maurice, she couldn't say anything. For some reason, she had trouble remembering the other knights' faces, and they were uninterested in each other, to the point where Ella said it was all ridiculous. Lucy went back to the bar and drank a keg of alcohol, while Maurice tried to find out who had gotten sick in the restroom. Lucy kissed Maurice on the cheek and passed out, and one of the knights was only convinced by the rumours that they were secretly dating. The heroine brought Theodore to the bed, where he did not wake up again, so she thought that he really fell asleep. The girl was pestered by Theodore's posture, which prevented a sound sleep. Ella never heard the reason why the man called her mistress. The girl was not completely honest with Theodore either, and she still had so many things she wanted to ask the man. She was worried about how many girls Theodore had seduced in his life. Theodore had been famous for his fickleness since his school days, so Ella wouldn't be surprised if one day he said he hated her. Even if it was all Theodore's whims, The girl was not going to get behind him so easily. Elle left, and the man immediately got out of bed, thanking himself for not giving in to temptation. In the harbour, Blanch watched the ship. Although he wanted to kill all the aristocrats who bought children from the East, but they needed to intervene because the criminals could escape, and then the Knights of October would have big problems. Blanch raised his hand at his subordinate who had made the previous point, for he didn't like to be prying into his musings. In the morning, Elle met Theodore, who had been very sad during the night, so he couldn't get much sleep. Maurice also wished the heroine a good morning, and the man began to ask why he was sitting in the office earlier than everyone else. Lucy came in, saying that Ella had brought a letter again. After yesterday, Maurice was very uncomfortable seeing Lady Laverne. Lucy had been trying to avoid the man since morning, but he was in the heroine's study, and he was also hiding. Yesterday he couldn't even look her in the face, so she thought she had bored Maurice. Lucy thought that the Knights of October had sent the letter by mistake, for the girl had opened it with another letter, but it was blank. It had been done on purpose, and now Blanche expected the heroine to spring into action. Maurice reminded him that the Knights of November were not obliged to help with unofficial tasks. The heroine could not refuse, for Blanche was chasing human traffickers in the East, and Her Majesty would be only too happy to have this problem solved. Ella thought it odd that Blanche had sent her a ticket for tonight at the opera. Jacques entered, saying he was going along with Elle, for he could not stay away. The girl thought that the young man could not go, as it would be as if he himself had voluntarily come to surrender to the traders, so he had to leave such thoughts and wait for them in the office. Elle asked Lucy to get ready for the evening, and Jacques decided that he would certainly follow her. Later, a carriage was brought, and Elle, with Theodore, dressed for the evening, went to the meeting. At this time, Charlotte was brought a dessert without cutlery. The girl realised that the maids were uncomfortable in her presence. From behind the door, Charlotte heard that another member of the household had died. Despite being Lady Charlotte's maid, the girl felt uneasy. Some said that the murderer had deliberately chosen children from merchant families who were betting on the chance of being delegates. The third victim was not involved with the companies, so it was clear that she had been killed for her involvement with the family. Charlotte ran outside in light clothing and called out to André. The man came down from the tree to her, worried because she could easily catch a cold. Unexpectedly, Charlotte asked André to teach her how to handle a sword. In the carriage, Elle decided to reveal the plan that today she was Luna Maria, a young widow who had come to the capital for entertainment from a port city in the north, and Theodore was her servant with whom she had a secret relationship. Today, they were infiltrating a seemingly ordinary opera house, but it was actually a large auction that sold people from the eastern continent. They could run into trouble if they said they were an ordinary couple. This evening, Theodore had to address heroine as a hostess. Besides, she understood that Lucy wanted to dress the man according to the script, but the clothes were too revealing. Theodore should have kept his mask on after all. His eyes were already red, and they didn't need to draw unnecessary attention. The couple reached the place, and the man thought that the heroine has no idea what dark desires he was trying to hide. At the entrance, the checker made sure that the tickets were authentic, but he could not let the girl through, as they had everything built on trust. The girl wanted to pull out the sword, but Theodore hugged her, saying that his mistress was dissatisfied enough with it, so she had come all the way from the north to find herself a new toy. The man quietly bribed the checker, after which he quietly let the pair pass through. The heroine didn't see Blanche anywhere in the audience. The girl said that Blanche always had the type to skip the uninteresting or problematic stuff, so they wouldn't be surprised if it was just the two of them tonight. Theodore started to get jealous as his mistress made excuses for the other man. The salesman was furious as one of the goods got out, and he had to catch it again. Losing a couple of goods wasn't the main thing right now, as the first floor couldn't start without the man. The salesman pulled Jacques out of the bag, saying that he would be one of his best goods. The bidding began, and the person sitting next to heroine began to say that the girl should have sat on the second floor. There was a difference between the floors, even in the way people were treated, but whether it was the first floor or the second floor didn't matter to anyone present. The unknown woman assured that if the heroine wished to find something truly worthwhile, she should go to the VIP room on the top floor. At this time, the salesman did not understand how Jacques managed to get out. The man saw the scar on the boy's face and went to get the doctor. Jacques freed himself from the ropes, after which he ran to find the children from the north. There were a lot of children in the room, sleeping peacefully on the beds. The very same salesman appeared behind him, saying that nothing mattered anymore, since Jacques had already inhaled the soporific gas. Ella bought one child after another, as she really wanted to become a VIP. The heroine did not understand why Adelaide would disguise herself and tell her such secrets. The girl did not expect Ella to guess so quickly, but still she decided to talk after the auction. The couple was taken to a room and locked in there, asking them to wait there for a while. Ella thought she had made a mistake because the organisers would never have invited them to the top floor for winning a large number of lots. The girl thought they had guessed that she had hidden the sword under her dress. The heroine was ready to do anything to avert suspicion from herself, so she asked Theodore to help her. The pair began to have fun, and the guards on the other side of the door thought they were trying to escape through the window. The men entered, and that's when Ella scolded them for interrupting her fun. The guard apologised, telling them to follow him, and he would take them to the VIP room. On the way, the man told them that if it was revealed that he had allowed heroine into the VIP room without permission, he would be killed. He was doing all this because he wanted the girl to go on and buy out all the children. Ella entered the VIP room, after which the second round of bidding was announced. Just from the looks of the bidders, one could tell that they were high-ranking officials or their servants. The opera worker brought the girl a quill and pen, telling her that things work differently on the top floor. Instead of an auction, everyone just writes what they want on this card, and the organisers look for the perfect product for the person. At this time, Blanch was asked why they weren't acting. It would be more fun for him to break in and cause a big commotion, but it wouldn't be too late to join in after the shouting started. Blanche wanted for once to see the virtuous Elle de Blois filled with absolute rage. The heroine didn't know what to write on the card, so she decided to answer as naturally as possible, so as not to arouse suspicion. One of the bidders noticed Elle's snow-white skin and offered to give her more pleasure than any of the auction items. The girl reassured Theodore, saying that the man should have watched his words, as her lover is very bloodthirsty, so no one knows when he might accidentally bite a man. Everyone turned in their sheets, after which the bidding began. After a while, items were found for everyone, so they could start granting the wishes of the participants. The room was filled with beds full of children who had been gassed to sleep, at which point it was finally clear that the organisers of the auction were smugglers from the east. It was strange that the VIP room wasn't that much different from the first floor. The first thing heroine needed to do was to check out what she had written on the sheet. Removing the veil, Elle saw the girl. She said that she wanted the youngest child at the auction, so there was a mistake. But the man said that she was very lucky, because she would get the two youngest girls at once, since the one pregnant. Some people came to them just for fun, while others ended up in the VIP lounge because of secret witchcraft rituals, medical curiosity, and so on. The man reiterated that everything everyone sees in front of them is personalised merchandise of the highest quality. Ella realised that the whole thing was a more horrible scheme, and this was not just a slave trading place for people from the East, but a place to buy entrails and organs. The girl felt very sick. That's when Theodore hugged her, telling her that there was no reason to hold back any longer. Whatever happened today, she could just blame her mad dog. The heroine instantly killed the auction employee with a fan, then drew her sword, and the carnage began. All the children in the rooms woke up and wanted to run away while the guards were gone, but their path was blocked by the auctioneer. Jacques slammed the man against the door, and then they began to make their way out of the room, as suddenly, on the way, Young noticed Ron's gold card. All the guards were concentrated in the VIP room. The heroine said that she would not kill those who would beg for mercy. Earlier, Theodore thought he would go wild, but he could do nothing at all. Ella de Blois' sword art was like a dance, light, fast and fierce, so that by the time you wanted to repel the blow, it would be too late. It was as if the girl read minds and put the man in mute shock, clearly cutting through the defence. The guards decided to surrender and lead the couple to the basement where the other prisoners were. The girl asked Theodore to follow the men and free the children, as she still had business to do on the first floor, and she couldn't go to the children covered in blood. Commander Blanch appeared, saying that there was no need as they had already taken care of everyone in the basement and on the first floor. As soon as Theodore saw the man, he immediately raised his sword at him. The heroine asked him not to do that, but Blanche even liked it. The soldiers of October wanted to intervene, but the man ordered them to stand their ground, for this was his chance to go up against the most rabid royal dog. The heroine asked Theodore to put his sword away, and the man calmed her down, saying that he was annoyed at the mere sight of the man who had forced Ella to clean up his mess. Blanche had enough common sense to control himself in front of a member of the royal family, so she would turn a blind eye this time, but he promised to actually finish Theodore off next time. The man remembered Blanche interrogating Ella and trying to find out where Leia, who was killed, was. In the carriage, Jacques thought he wanted to know if Elle was angry with him for acting on his own initiative, but she fell asleep as soon as they were in the carriage. The young man admitted to Theodore that the girl hadn't told him off, and it wasn't like she was going to kick him out of the order for it. Being in the order had pissed Jacques off at first, but now it wasn't so bad, and he had a debt to the heroine that he had to repay. Theodore was starting to get annoyed by this, as the young man should have realized what he was getting himself into. His eyes, liver, and even his heart were only overlooked by the sellers because he was caught late, but he was the freshest of the lot. Jacques once again owed his life to Elle, so whatever Mistress Theodore decided to do to the young man, he was not to complain. After getting out of the carriage, Maurice came running to Theodore, who was very worried about sending a nobleman on such a dangerous assignment. The heroine asked everyone to come into the house, as they had something to discuss. Jacques found one thing in the basement of the opera house. It was because of the royal crest that people from the east were able to enter the capital without any inspection. It was a gold plaque that was given to people from the royal family. If the plaque was real, someone from the royal family was behind the sale of the children. The heroine knew a way in which they could very soon figure out who was behind all the crimes, but she was worried about Jacques. He was a doer and a thinker, so he had a lot of chivalry to learn. The couple was about to leave, but Maurice couldn't let them go like that, and because of that, he suggested they stay the night at his place and take a bath. Later, it bothered the girl very much that she was sleeping under the same roof as Theodore. No one ever came to Heroine's room, so she went to the shower room. At the door of the room, Ella met Theodore, saying that he could go first. The man wanted to let the girl pass, but eventually he offered to take a bath together. In all the countless love stories that Heroine had been forced to read by the princess, a scene where a man and a woman took a bath together meant that there was something between them. Theodore offered it to her so nonchalantly, as if he was inviting her to dinner, and if Ella refused, she would look completely heartless. The bathtub was rather cramped, and it would have been difficult for the two of them to fit together, so the man asked to be allowed to wash Heroine. There were no maids in the manor who were willing to help the girl with this, and he was pretty good at it. The man started with her hair, while Ella thought Theodore was constantly being serviced by a lot of people, but now he was doing it for her. His touches were a little rougher than Catherine's, but still more gentle and careful than she had thought. Theodore couldn't watch this anymore, so he climbed into Elle's bathtub and started kissing her. The man remembered how Heroine had once told him that she had received a letter from Francois to open the gate, and it so happened that she had seen Theodore when he opened the gate that day. Remembering the rioters waving the flags of the House of Blois, they wanted to blame the girl, but since it was problematic for them to have Elle be the one to open the gate, they sent a similar message to the man. The heroine didn't know who sent this message, but she could think it was the Queen. The unknown used their weaknesses to force them to open the gate and take advantage of the chaos that prevailed to get into the palace. So now, Theodore had to do everything to protect the princess. Suddenly, the knights came to her, as they had received information, and the girl had to appear at the court. Someone turned out to witness Elle committing a murder in East County. The man came to his senses at the memory. The girl was sorry the bathtub was so small, because if it were a little bigger, the two of them could enjoy the hot water. Being near the heroine, Theodore was seized by inappropriate thoughts whenever he saw her. The man thought that Elle was uncomfortable, so he decided to leave. The girl tried to stop him and accidentally pulled off his towel. Theodore thought it was unfair, but he didn't mind even if Ella saw something. She could watch whenever she wanted to. Theodore was tired, so he decided to go to his room. In the hallway, Maurice met a man who could not find heroin in any way. Theodore confessed that the girl was in the bath they had taken together. Maurice was surprised, but calmly accepted it. There were 4 victims left to complete the Queen's plan, and the meeting with Blanche only added to Theodore's impatience. The next morning, the heroine headed to the Heavenly Palace to meet with Queen Maria Claire Christina. Later, the princess was displeased because Ella visited the Heavenly Palace, but never got to see her. The princess's assistant handed over a letter from the heroine. The girl told her that there would soon be a knight's tournament, and this year she would definitely win and present the princess with a victory wreath. Pennine was very upset that heroine wrote such short letters. Currently, jousting tournaments were rapidly gaining popularity in the Ron Kingdom. The tournament was won by whoever managed to break the opponent's spear or push him off his horse. Every year, before the celebration of the founding of the kingdom, a large-scale tournament was held, bringing knights from all over the country. The winner received the honour of standing beside the Queen and presenting a wreath of victory to the one they served or loved. This tournament was the ultimate dream of all the Queen's knights. Theodore told Charlotte that it was too late for regrets, since thanks to her, he and his mistress had much in common. They even took a bath together last night. The princesses thought they had crossed the line of no return, but the man had a bad memory of it. But the heroine was quite impressed when she saw his body. Charlotte couldn't stand it and slapped the man's face, not realizing how he could do that to her Elle. Theodore had expected such a reaction, but the girl could have hit harder. The princess calmed the girl down, saying that being so correct and conservative, Ella would never do something like that to someone she wasn't even engaged to. Charlotte was annoyed that Theodore was provoking her on purpose, as if he wanted to see her reaction. The Queen's serial murders in an attempt to blame everything on Princess Pinin and a member of the royal family directly connected to human trafficking was guilty of all crimes. The heroine was done with all the things she had to do for the day, so she could get down to the hated paperwork. The girl still could not concentrate, as naked Theodore kept appearing in front of her eyes. Lucy, who was in the heroine's office, asked Elle to exclude her from the night tournament. The girl refused, as all knights of their order were required to participate, unless they had some special valid reason like injury. Lucy's face darkened for a second, but she calmly went about her business. Theodore had been missing somewhere since lunchtime, and the girl was very tired after her visit to the Heavenly Palace. At the meeting, the Queen said that Ella had personally brought her the royal plaque, and if word leaked out that the royal family had anything to do with the slave trade, there would be a massive political conflict between the West and East, causing trade relations from the East to end. With all that said, this was a great opportunity to do a sweep from the inside. The Queen needed more solid evidence, so they needed to find someone directly related to the head of yesterday's operation. Currently, Theodore had returned from his meeting with the princess, but he still had time to finish his work. The man came to Heroine's house because it seemed to him that it would be wrong to go straight home. Besides, he wanted to see the girl's face again, so he decided to keep Heroine company. The girl thought it was silly, as they were not dating and did not start a relationship. It hurt Theodore a little to hear such a thing. Auguste Theodore Jean de Claremont had kept the thought of Ella de Blois falling in love with him in his head, but he had seen the responsibility that had fallen on his mistress's shoulders since the series of murders had begun. Regardless, he only wanted to be near her and had said all those words to her just to avoid seeming like a burden to her. He'd been waiting for a chance to get her unintentionally, but he thought they were close enough that the heroine wouldn't reject any of his attempts, and so Elle's thoughtless remark had left him speechless. Letters came to Adeline, but she did not find the desired one among them. In the opera, the heroine said that things were different now, and if the girl was connected with the human trafficking case, she should be made an enemy of the kingdom, and as a knight, she would be obliged to kill Adele. 2 months ago, someone contacted Adelina to rent her ship. The unknown person needed to transport some spices from the eastern continent cheaply, so he would like to use the girl's vessel. At present, Adeline was regretting her decision. Human trafficking from the Eastern continent was a criminal act, the punishment for which was strictly prescribed by royal law. Because of the unknown person who had implicated Adele in smuggling Oriental slaves into their country, she now risked being put on the scaffold at any moment for being an accomplice. When she met Elle at that opera house, she was relieved. Adele wanted to believe her words at least a little, but in the end, she didn't trust her. After 10 years of friendship, it wasn't hard to distinguish truth from lies, so the heroine believed her friend one last time. In doing so, the girl had to bring to Elle the man who had rented her ship, for that was the only way she could preserve their friendship. Since nothing had happened to Adele so far, the heroine was really helping her, so all she had to do was to bring the unknown masked man. One quiet day at the Order's headquarters, Laverne de Lucy was very excited as she overheard the couple talking that evening. The girl was saying that Elle was so conservative that unless they were officially dating, the two of them could kiss all they wanted, but the heroine would never see a future with him. Because of the Queen, Elle wasn't ready to be distracted by a sweet romance, so Theodore must first make her feel desperate. The man was reluctant to engage, but Lucy assured her that one small change could have a powerful effect. At the port, Elle said she had worried a lot when the murder cases affected the children of the merchants, but it was a relief to hear that all was well now. Every year after the Knights tournament, the Round Kingdom sent a delegation to the east. With this arrangement, they were able to meet the shipping schedule without loss. Princess Pennine made Ella responsible for managing the trade process. Because of the murders going on, merchants would be reluctant to get involved in trading, so the princess decided to take advantage of Elle's reputation. The fall of Eastern trade would force the Round Kingdom into massive debt. It was the perfect way to weaken Queen Claire's power as ruler. There was a brief lull right now, so Theodore would have liked to enjoy this short respite, but there was a heavy weight on his heart. The heroine thought that the man was trying to take her hand, but Theodore pulled her away, saying that he was never interested in tournaments because he did not need money or fame, but a knight who values his honor. So the man thought that the girl would present a victory wreath to the princess. Theodore knew that Lucy's approach was not for him, so suddenly he reached out to the girl to kiss her. The future, where Elle would win this year's tournament, was not destined to happen, because one day, heroine lost control of her horse and was thrown out of the saddle. For the man, everything froze the moment the heroine died, but he tried to slowly move on, one step at a time. Theodore vowed to ensure Ella won the tournament, as he would always be by her side. Blanche was visited by a subordinate who asked him to take care of the manuscript. Suddenly, the man had a visitor, and the man was not particularly surprised when Theodore came to see him. The man had been looking for some papers the previous night, as there was no one with the name Leah among the list of girls from the Western District who were supposedly the Queen's targets. Leah's identity was not clear, and if she was not connected to the delegation or Isle, it was unclear why the Queen had killed her. Theodore asked Blanche who this unknown Leah was. The man wished the guest would leave before he started threatening him. Blanche began to bully Theodore, and he was offended that he thought he was so weak, and Theodore should have been the one to tell Blanche to watch who he was barking at. The commander really wanted to kill the man, but he decided to hold back as he valued his life, while refusing to tell about Leah. The commander got excited and suggested that he would answer Theodore's question if he defeated him in the upcoming jousting tournament. Every year, someone finished the tournament with an injury or forfeited their life, and since Blanche couldn't kill a member of the royal family without consequences, he wanted to use the tournament as an excuse. The heroine was sitting at dinner when suddenly the nanny noticed that Ella looked like a girl madly in love. Ella ran into the bathroom, blushing completely, wondering if she could really fall in love with Theodore. As deputy captain, she couldn't let rumours spread that she had fallen in love with her assistant. In the morning, the commander announced that they would be holding a preliminary night tournament. It was the best opportunity to show what their order could do, so the man hoped that as many participants as possible would make it to the finals. Officially, only 2 from each order could make it to the finals. So, not considering the captain, they have to split into 2 teams, and for the next 2 days they have to pick a winner for each team. Morris explained that the commander is out of the tournament, as the knight who has won it the last 5 times is excluded from the tournament. Everyone was determined, but the jousting tournament was very dangerous, and every year at least one participant died, and it was also easy to get hurt if you got too nervous. In the preliminary match, the heroine and Theodore were on different teams, plus Lucy was worried that the man would be against her. Lady Laverne had never made it past the intermediate stage, as every year something happened to her. It was unclear what was happening, as with Lucy's skills, she should have made it to at least the finals with the deputy commander. The girl knew there was a crack in her spear, but it didn't bother her. There were a lot of knights participating in the preliminary round, so in order to speed up the process, practice spears were used, and they were scratched a bit near the tip, so that the spear would be easier to break. If Lucy held the spear as steady as possible, Theodore's spear would break first. The girl had a chance to be among the finalists, a chance to be in the spotlight and have her honour raised, as that was the essence of existence for her. As a child, Lucy ran up to her father, but he told her that her life would be very difficult from now on. She would have to constantly hide in the shadows, alone, for it was the only way to stay safe, as no one was supposed to know about Lucy. The girl's father asked her to remember that she had to live an ordinary life and not attract attention. Lucy knew that being the centre of attention wasn't good for her, and she would definitely get hurt, but it was the only way she wouldn't make it to the finals. Theodore easily threw the girl out of the saddle, but she fell on Maurice, who was very worried about her well-being. Later, the girl treated Maurice's wounds, saying that she was very worried about him. Lucy did not understand why he did it, because he realised that she did it on purpose. Maurice had seen her do similar things, so he had to realise how resilient she was. When Maurice realised that the girl was going to fall off the horse, his body reacted instantly. He didn't know what he was doing, so he thought he didn't want Lucy to hurt herself. The girl asked herself not to make it up, as she still had the same boring and ignorant Maurice in front of her. The man was kind to everyone, so it was easy for him to say such things. It was frustrating for the girl to see Maurice injured. The commander was informed that the preliminary round of the first team was over, and it was a quick victory for Theodore, so he would be counted among the finalists. Defeating El de Blois was the rule of the November Order, which said that whoever defeats the heroine would advance to the finals. The girl didn't want to mess around with everyone for long, so she ordered 10 people to attack her at once, but in the end, no one ever broke her spear. During the rest, the girl was surprised that Theodora had gone without her for lunch. It wasn't necessary for a regular assistant to always have lunch with his mentor, and besides, Lucy thought that nothing happened between them anyway. The girl explained to Heroine what she had actually said to Theodore, and that she had been very harsh on him. The day came for the finals of the jousting tournament, where the Queen arrived at the arena in Lupes in the capital. Philip Louis Ferdinand thought that today would be another day of sitting like a puppet. The Queen asked the princess to calm down, for she had said many times that during such events one should show one's best self. Near the knights' tents, the arena workers saw André for the first time. The stableman did not understand why Theodore had ordered him to look after Heroine's horse. He was very tired, so he decided to take a short nap. All the spectators in the arena were cheering, as El de Blois had reached the semi-finals. On the way out of the arena, the girl asked the soldier if he had heard anything about the matches of the participants from the November Order. The man had heard that Theodore had easily defeated his opponent. It should have been a difficult match, but Theodore didn't give his opponent a chance. The heroine was surprised, as the man was not interested in the knight's tournament, but he had been acting very strangely the last few days. The knight asked her to give him the horse, as Theodore had ordered him to look after it during the break. At the knight's barracks, Blanche was being congratulated for reaching the semi-finals. The commander's opponents were afraid to go out with the man, because they knew they would be injured or even killed after the match. Suddenly, the knights were talking about Blanche's eye, and the fact that it was the heroine who had done this to him. The man had already forgotten that, plus he was sure she wasn't destined to reach his level. He was not concerned about his opponent, whom he had defeated many times, but Blanche's assistant was worried that his eye would become a liability during his match with Theodore. During lunch, Theodore rode up to Heroine on horseback. The man asked to use his horse in the next match. Ella was worried about Theodore, as he was expected to be the champion this year based on the results of the previous matches. The man admitted that he wasn't the least bit interested in becoming champion from the start, but there was a girl at the match that he was rooting for. Theodore asked to imagine that this was their last time together. The heroine said that it wasn't, because they would never let someone go so easily. At this time, André asked Marie-Antoine de Lorraine to get off of him. Charlotte could never even think that a man could make it this far in the tournament. André had seen the table, and it said he would go up against Elle de Blois first, so he asked Charlotte who she would cheer for. And then came the moment of Theodore's duel with Blanche, when they both decided not to use armour to defeat each other. Ella thought that the man had recently spoken those words to her, because he was afraid that the match with Blanche would not end in his favour and he would be badly injured. She had a very bad feeling about it. André was expecting his opponent, but Heroine was nowhere to be seen. The judge asked the man to leave the shield. Since Elle didn't show up, he would just deny her the fight. At this time, Maurice could not find Lucy anywhere. The knight asked the man why he was not on the same field as the heroine's fight. Maurice was confident in the girl, however he was still worried about Theodore. By all indications, Theodore's horse was poisoned. The man thought it would run quickly, however the horse was not going to move at all. Blanche began to launch an attack, but Theodore's horse began to run away from his pursuer. The man did not understand why the captain was not approaching at the right distance. After a while it came to him to determine the distance with one eye. After Theodore's blow, Blanche's spear almost fell apart, so they were left to wait to see who would last longer, the man's horse or the spear. The commander of the Knights of October began to push Theodore down, making him think he was a monster. Blanche seriously wounded Theodore and was about to finish him off while the heroine tried to make her way to him. Suddenly, the commander noticed that his spear was broken, and then the judge declared Theodore's victory. The man asked Blanche to get ready to tell him about Leia. Suddenly Blanche remembered how Elle had wounded him in the eye, though she could have safely aimed for his neck, and then her spear would not have broken. The heroine could not do that, for she was a knight and valued all living things. Presently the commander left, saying that he would stop by Theodore's house later and pay him a visit. The man had internal injuries, so to face Elle in the finals, in this form would be very difficult. The heroine understood that Theodore knew it was dangerous to ride her horse, but still he traded her, not his, in this fight. The man risked his life to ensure her victory. The girl didn't understand what she was doing in the arena with Theodore and why she wasted his sacrifice. For a second, Ella was lost because she was worried about Theodore and couldn't fight the excitement. Now she was driven by the desire not to disappoint him, but her duel was surely already over. The girl thought that Theodore would be mortified when he heard this, so she didn't understand how she could act so irresponsibly. Suddenly, Andy was glad that the girl had finally arrived, since while he was waiting, he almost fell asleep on his horse. The knight reported to the queen that although André had accepted the duel, the rules required them to disqualify the heroine. The queen could not do that, as Theodore had been defeated in the battle, and she could not leave the audience without a colourful final fight. In the arena, Elle thought that André was Charlotte's knight bodyguard, but she hadn't seen him in a tournament before, so she didn't know what his skill level was. The finals of the night tournament started, and one of the captains remarked that André was quite skillful as he could compete with Elle on equal terms. Captain November saw that the heroine's horse was not obeying, so she could only be in defence and block. André was convinced of the girl's strength, and because of that, he decided to take the matter seriously. Elle couldn't even catch the man from behind. Suddenly, André remembered that Charlotte had promised to cheer for him. After all, this was his first fencing tournament, and the man was almost like family to her. The man wondered if she really meant it, as Charlotte didn't even look at him. At this point, André decided to put everything on the line and end the duel quickly. Theodore's horse did not want to participate in the battle in any way, but the heroine told her that her master was taking a risk just to have her in the arena. Ella roared at André and broke his spear with ease. After the duel, the girl asked the knight why he was waiting for her, but he simply replied that he wanted to confirm something. Elle climbed up to the princess and handed her the victory wreath. Josephine was overjoyed that the girl had received the fifth and final wreath of victory from her knight. The heroine said that she had only done what was expected of her as the princess's bodyguard. The girl offered Josephine to escort her, but she refused, as she saw that Elle wanted to return to Theodore as soon as possible. The heroine thanked the princess and ran to the man's tent. There was no one in the tent, after which the girl was approached by knights who wanted her to celebrate her victory in the jousting tournament with them. Ella thought that if the soldiers found out that she had feelings for her aide, he would be ridiculed as a deputy commander. It would be humiliating for a knight, but Elle could not protect the one she loved, so she decided to sacrifice her honor. The commander ordered that the heroine be left behind as she finally realized what was truly important. When the time comes, the knights will form the confidence that their honor will bring joy to another person. At the same time, attachment to this idea will eventually lead a person to lose the most valuable thing, and only after losing everything did the commander realize his arrogance. The heroine entered the doors of the Claremont estate, where Theodore's mother asked what had brought the girl at such a late hour. The woman realized that she had asked a stupid question since the heroine had come running to them in the middle of the night, which meant only one thing, that she was worried about Theodore and his injuries. The Duchess escorted Ella to the man's room, after which the girl entered it and made sure Theodore was alive. The man was sound asleep, so the heroine decided to check on his condition and leave. Ella wanted to undo Theodore's buttons to examine the wound, but the man grabbed her arm, telling her that if she didn't decide to take responsibility for it now, things would become problematic from here on. Theodore assured that his wound looked worse than it really was, since almost everything was cured. The heroine didn't know why the man was going to such lengths. As long as she could protect those close to her, she didn't care if it could end in a breakup, but she didn't want to lose anyone. The heroine decided to take charge, and although they weren't engaged, she thought they could date normally. And more than anything, she feared that while Theodore would be crippled if she wasn't there to stop the man. The girl promised to kill him if he started to control her or set his eyes on another woman. Theodore pulled Elle against him, saying that he was very good and he would satisfy the girl so that she would forget about his wounds. The heroine came at a perfect moment, so she could just trust him.